All right, it's 6:30, and I'd like to bring this last business meeting of Urbana School District 116 for the academic year to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Mine is up.
I know. I'll say it again. Member Hasanaka.
Here.
Member Langendorf here. Member Baxley.
Here.
Member Jones. Here. Member Stanton. Vice President Exum.
Here.
And President Pulowski.
Here, worthy of note is Member Exum will be participating in our action item votes remotely because she's home sick tonight. There is one modification of tonight's agenda. We would like to bring action item 11.18, administrative personnel items, up prior to administrative reports. We have one citizen statement submitted so far. If anybody else would like to make a statement before the board, there are goldenrod sheets in the back of the room. Please fill one out and turn it into Recording Secretary Lori Johnson. Up first is Julie Duvall.
Hi, I'm Julie Duvall. I'm a parent of multiple students at Urbana. Paul, I'd like to ask for an accommodation so that if I go over 5 minutes that I can speak like 8 minutes.
Of course.
Thank you. I really don't want to be that person that comes in here complaining all the time, but after 4 or 5 visits, we finally got the board to get us on on session, and it was an excellent presentation last week, or 2 weeks ago, and I hope I've shown the board that I give credit where credit's due. There was a great presentation from Todd and Beth, and that was all I spoke about last time I was here. Today there was an incident at the Urbana Middle School, and I talked to multiple staff members before deciding to come here. But the reason I am here is because I thought it was a perfect example of what SPED parents go through. Without going into a lot of details, I took my son to UMS for transition today. He wasn't registered. I registered at his elementary school, but regardless, I don't think people realize how these things affect. My son, I was talking to Lori this afternoon, and my son wanted to come speak. And he got so overwhelmed that he had a meltdown. And when I left my house, my husband was dealing with the meltdown. When parents tell you that there's a problem, we're not just saying that to be a pain. There's a reason. My son doesn't, some of you are aware of the issues we had last year at school. It took a lot for us to get him to come to middle school. It's a big school, 6th grade school in general. The way that the staff reacted was ridiculous. I get a hold of Mr. Cooper, who was amazing. We had a 5-minute meeting. We made 3 or 4 plans to put in place, thought outside the box what would work for my son. We left there thinking things were fine. I have yet to speak to him. I do know he's behind me. But those plans didn't get followed through. Another example of where building admins, you go to your admin, and then it doesn't follow through on the lower end. So I just want to, my son was warehoused today. At 9 o'clock, he went to school. At 9:05, they realized that he wasn't registered. Or at 9 o'clock, he wasn't registered. At 9:05, they realized they had a SPED student that wasn't registered. We sat in the hallway for an hour. At 9:20, I called Todd's assistant and said, we're nothing. We're less than. Because I had staff members at the high school or middle school tell me that the kids that were in the gym or the cafeteria, they had a program to do, and we would have to wait. My son's a student here. He's federally protected, more protected than another student. You get funding for him to be here, and you warehoused him like he was nothing in a hallway. And poor Mr. Cooper, who thought that we had dealt with things and it was fine, at 10:30 we left. They were willing to keep my son, but they had no preparations for him. An IEP was made in January. Any school function, that IEP needs to be honored. I understand he wasn't registered. But at 10:30 when I left, they wanted me to provide the school with an IEP. By the time I did some errands and got to the central office, I spoke to Todd's assistant as well as the person in charge. It was a CO. I don't know really who she is, but and I got blamed. It was my fault he wasn't registered, but his case manager at his elementary school registered him. It was my fault that we didn't have fidget kits. I was told by a central office, this woman, I said, what about fidget kits? He just sat in the hallway doing nothing, just sitting there. And she said, I don't know where we have them. I don't know where they are. I understand it's too loud in there. Headphones are expensive, but I can try to find you some. Like we were nothing. And I don't mind. And I told her, I run a network. I have a shed full of fidget kits. I'd be happy to give Urbana. And then she threw that in my face when I got here to central office. And so, again, I just want to reiterate, we are people. And I don't understand, Jennifer, how your staff could have any student just sitting there. So I left at 6:30. I'm not sending him to school tomorrow. I am not going to give Urbana the luxury of getting a dime from him for going to a school program that nobody has asked me. I don't know where he's going. One of the options today was if it's too loud, he can go sit and splash by himself. Why would I send my kid to school to sit by himself? Whatever program that you have over here, you need to make arrangements that you should always prepare so that SPED has something over here just in case you need it. And they didn't. So I'm begging you, Jennifer, and all those that know me and know my family, and any other SPED student, this has got to stop. I was told, trust me. I said, do you watch board meetings? I've made it very clear you have no currency with me. They want me to trust that I'll take him to school tomorrow and that they're going to put him where he wants to. I even had one teacher wanting me to leave. Just leave him here and you can go. It's a scary environment. And I know that Todd's leaving and Beth is coming in. You want us to wait till July 1st to get our rights upheld? And that's the reality. And I respect a lot of you, but I don't feel respected. I feel bad for Mr. Cooper, who had no idea that the plans that we put in place were not followed through. The director of that program, why at 9:15 when you knew you had a registered SPED student, why didn't you go get an IEP? Why is that my job to go get an IEP? All you had to do is say to me, I am really accommodating. I understand it's the first day of school. Could you know, we're really busy. Could we start again tomorrow? But no, he was willing to stay if he sat there in agony under your program without his accommodations because they weren't ready. And talking and communicating is really important. And the last thing I want to say is, while we're working this out, and I've had pretty serious, tough conversations with people at this table and other admins and incoming admins, we need to be respectful of, we don't know your job, but you don't know ours, and you don't know our kids. And I started off at the middle school today, and I'm afraid. I don't want to send my kid there. And I'm one of your biggest advocates. I'm trying to help in the SPED community. But when I have your staff say, we know who you are, I'm at wit's end. I have your phone number. I've called you. I can talk to the building admin. You are two people in this whole equation. And it's scary. So I just would like to again remind you that whatever inner board politics, whatever the stuff is going on at school, these are people's lives. People are afraid. And I'm really disgusted at Urbana that my kid was nothing in warehouse today. So when you hear that terminology, That's where we come up with it at. You couldn't find fidget kits, Jennifer. Like, it's mind-boggling to me that they're at the school and nobody thought to go find somebody that had a fidget kit. We just want this new 6th grader to sit in the hallway and he can hear the clapping. It was like he wasn't good enough. Is that the message you want for my kid, for your SPED students? Because that's exactly the message that was received today. And knowing a lot of you personally and knowing where your hearts really are, and I come in here to tell you all to your face that I still walk out feeling like my kids and my family were nothing, that should speak a lot. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Julie. Okay. So sorry to hear that. There is no call for an executive session after this meeting. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. There are no commendations or recognitions tonight, no public hearing, and no communications. Next up is action item 11.8, administrative personnel items. Do you have an introduction for us, Angie?
I do. Mr. Rudolph, do you mind coming up to the table? Miss Erica Rudolph spent the past 3 years as a 4th grade dual language French teacher at Stratton Academy of the Arts in Champaign. Ms. Rudolph has also served as a multilingual learner teacher at Garden Hills Elementary and a high school French teacher for 13 years. Ms. Rudolph has a master's degree in educational administration from Eastern Illinois University, a bachelor's degree in teaching license from Southern Illinois University, an ESL endorsement from National Louis University, and a technology certificate from Augustana University. Erica currently lives in Champaign with her husband Seth, 4 children, and it looks like we maybe have one here tonight, and 3 lazy house cats. She enjoys traveling, reading, and going for walks or runs while listening to podcasts. Interviews for assistant principal position at Thomas Paine took place on Monday, June 12th. All Thomas Paine staff members were welcome to participate in the process. Ms. Rudolph was selected by the interview team as the most outstanding candidate. Erica has stated that she is thrilled to join the Thomas Paine Elementary family as the next assistant principal, replacing Ms. Andrea Jackson, who was promoted to principal. It is our pleasure to recommend Ms. Erica Rudolph to be the next assistant principal at Thomas Paine Elementary, effective July 24th.
Is there a motion for the floor?
I move that Erica be accepted as assistant principal at Thomas Paine.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Baxley,
Yes.
Member Jones,
Yes.
Member Hasanaka,
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. President Pulowski.
Yes. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be joining the team at Thomas Paine and Urbana Schools. Thank you.
Yay. Thanks, Erica. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, we have a long list of administrative reports tonight. First up is a presentation from Energy Rooftop Solar Panel Systems.
So we have the Verigy team here with us tonight. As you know, they were here back in April when we talked about the rooftop projects at both Thomas Paine and Wiley, and they needed a little time to put together the full scope of the project and all of the financials. So they're here tonight to share more information. So I'll pass it on to Gordon.
Thank you, Dr. Ivory Tatum. Hope everyone can hear me okay. I know there's a few new board members, so I want to take a second to introduce ourselves. I'm Gordon Schweitzer. I've been in the energy efficiency, solar energy industry about 15 years, licensed professional engineer in the state of Illinois, master's in energy and environmental policy, and tonight we have my boss, Bob Smith, and Dave Ortman. Let them introduce themselves.
Okay. I'm Bob Smith. I've been in the industry longer than 15 years, maybe over 40. Indiana University, I'm the sales director for our Midwest region, which stretches from Texas all the way up through Wisconsin, 6 different states. And just a pleasure to be here. I was here in April when we discussed the rooftop solar projects, and our team, I think, working together with the school district has really come up with a great solution, and we're happy to present that tonight.
I'm Dave Artman. I'm the local engineer. I'm a structural engineer. I've been working in this area 40 years, including a project here at Urbana High School. But I live in Tolono, so I'm kind of the person that comes up when you need something.
And, Jim Simonin sends his regrets. He's at the airport picking up his daughter and granddaughter. He is a Wiley graduate and would be the project manager on this project. So he also owned a roofing business before coming on board, so he's very familiar with roofing and all the ins and outs. But and then Verigy, we are a national energy service company. One thing we're excited about is we are received through our accrediting body, which is the National Association of Energy Service Companies, the highest accreditation as an energy service provider, which is a third-party reviewed program that really we get graded on and we get accredited by meeting the energy savings and all the savings that we project for our customers. We're wrapping up an installation at the Springfield Airport. It's about a 3 megawatt or so system. Groundbreaking is, ribbon cutting, I should say, is next Monday. Everyone's welcome. Just let us know so we can plan ahead. And we just wrapped up our Quincy Airport solar project. Locally, we're doing a geothermal project at Cumberland. We recently approved a solar roof job at Prairie View, Ogden, and did geothermal Rantoul and did some solar projects down at Unity School District in Tolono at the Unity East and West Elementary School. So, and Carrollton, we did a roof solar project recently too. So excited about all those projects and stand the invitation to visit anytime. We have a short presentation tonight to kind of go over a lot of the information we went over in April, and I put this potential project that we've been working on for a while in front of the board for consideration. So the second page of the presentation, thank you, John. What's really driving the conversation? A lot of utility price increases that are hitting this district and districts across Illinois and also the country. We anticipate this current year the district will spend roughly $1.3 million per year electricity versus about $919,000 over the last year. So we're looking at ways to try to find energy efficiency and solar energy savings based on these rising energy costs. This is a major source of current spend that the district is spending right now, and we anticipate these costs to continue to rise as they have into the future. So that's driving a lot of the why on the cost side, and the next slide is driving a lot of the why Illinois, why is there a sense of urgency to take advantage of a lot of the incentives that are available. So this is a major change in the incentive policy for districts, for solar projects across the country. So what was a tax credit has now been made into a reimbursable grant through the Inflation Reduction Act. And I do want to point out there's actually more savings than what we have in the PowerPoint because we're using domestic content modules, which are modules made in the USA. The district qualifies for an additional about 6% or so for the Inflation Reduction Act, which puts it, I'll get into the numbers a little bit later, but over $1 million direct reimbursement back to the district.
We call them modules, but they're known as solar panels.
Thank you, Bob.
Took me a while to figure that out.
So that's a major federal incentive. Another incentive statewide is the solar renewable energy credits. We did all the grant and energy applications for this, for Unity, for Rossville, for Quincy, Springfield. This is a state program that the district also qualifies for, and this is a major source of revenue that is paid quarterly for the first 6 years of the project. And then more locally, the Smart Inverter rebate, which is an Ameren incentive, would also be given back to the district in a direct pay scenario. So We don't receive any of those incentives. They'll get paid directly to the district. And then part of our accreditation is standing behind our energy savings, so we guarantee 90% of the kilowatt hour production that we put in front of you tonight. Some factors we can't control, like how much sun we'll get next year, but we have a pretty good historical understanding of what this zip code based on airport data will generate. So we stand behind that production, and we will make repairs and improvements needed if we fall short. And then a big part of the project is Wiley is in need of kind of immediate roof repairs as part of that project remodel. And we've also found some savings there in the approach we've taken versus a full roof tear-off that we'll get into shortly. And then kind of an ancillary benefit, the district will give up no ground space. So this is all rooftop solar systems. This won't impact any future plans for expansion or the green space or park spaces that you have in the community. Not talking about it as much tonight, but kind of a non-economic benefit is in each building will have a display right when you walk in that will show students, staff, and visitors in the community how much solar is being generated on site, the amount of CO2, trees, local houses will be offset by those systems. And there's tons of curriculum out there that can be brought into the classroom to educate students on really the wave of students in your class right now, high school students, middle school students. The future is in the green energy sector, and we hope that we give them some exposure to it, and this is a way to do that. So kind of a recap of where we've been. So we've been working for a while on what we call the feasibility assessment, which is what we presented in April. At the April board meeting, the district approved the letter of intent, which authorized us to dig into the details, take the project out to local bidders, local contracting community, and we're excited to say that really all of our contractors are local. So the funds that are given to the district from the state, local, and federal resources will stay in the community, which is exciting. And we also did an infrared roof analysis, which we'll go into, that identified if there is wet insulation on Wiley and how we're saving dollars on that front. So we're kind of sharing the cost effort on that part. So that agreement included an $18,000 fee. So that's kind of the commitment the district has taken to this point. So if the district decides not to approve the project, that is just part of the cost sharing that we agreed to. And then for your consideration tonight, potentially approve the solar rooftop systems at Wiley and Thomas Paine. And I should add, on the construction side, our team is ready to move right away. And then we're also taking advantage of, especially at Wiley, some off-season, off-summer season construction savings. So while there's availability to do the work, we'll be doing the work on top of the roof out of the way and be able to see progress right away on taking care of that roof. All right. So Dave, I don't know if you want to go through the scope of Wiley real quick.
At Wiley, we did an infrared exploration. That's how you find out if you got.
Do you need the
Oh,
mic?
sorry.
Okay. I can hear him.
Yeah, I usually talk real loud. At least that's what my grandchildren say. But, okay, so Wiley, because we've been talking with Randy, we came up with a roof solution. We did an infrared. We found some wet spots that'll have to be replaced. It's all included in the cost. The roofing part of Wiley is ready to go. Basically, we'll have to do the ROE permit application, get the final drawings, which we'll get from IGW. We work with Scott Wachter, which you guys work with Scott Wachter. We'll handle all the paperwork, like I said. We'll keep Randy completely informed of schedules and stuff. I'm assuming you would be the contact. We have daily reports and all that on the information. Once the roofing is done, then we start on the electrical. In fact, we got a meeting next week with Ameren because it's a weird electrical system at Wiley with the three-phase system. So we're meeting with them. And then you start work on that. And then once the contract's signed and everything, we order the solar modules and all the parts that go with them. And we work out a schedule. issue it to you for review, and then see how that works with the activities within the school. We don't go in the school much except into the boiler room, Randy. That'll be the only place we'll have to go in, is the back door into the MDP. And we'll be outside the whole time working. Basically, this is a fall project, depending on final delivery of materials. And ROE permit doesn't take very long. We know Gary Lewis very well. So that's basically,
And one thing I would add to that, Dave, is that, before we get to the next slide, is that the middle picture is kind of the finished product there. We're doing a white coating on top of that roof. Then we're installing bifacial modules on top of that. And what a bifacial module is, it's essentially solar on two sides. So the roof will be cooler, which will improve performance, but also get reflection off of that white roof onto the back of the solar module. So this is shown to generate quite a bit more savings. Those additional kilowatt-hour savings aren't on our cash flow, but they're additional savings that the district would receive and keep all those additional utility savings. So this is a kind of a tried and true method we've put into a lot of districts across the country, and it is a great way to not only get a 20-year warranty, which is a standard on a roof, but protect that roof from the elements with a solar system that has a 25-year production warranty. And then on the next page shows our the infrared analysis. So previous to this discussion, one of the considerations that was planned in the capital projects was to do a full roof tear-off, which is a common practice. Through the infrared analysis, we identified about 412 square foot of wet insulation. That's about less than 1%. So the other 99% or more is dry insulation, which can be reused, and that will be kept away from a local landfill. So that is essentially a way to reduce cost that would otherwise be spent on a capital project. So this is a way to essentially keep the conditions of the roof in good shape, and then address those current wet spots, and then essentially extend the warranty another 20 years and put solar modules on top of that. So that's some digging that we're doing. So if we didn't do that, then it'd be a full roof tear off, and then a bunch of insulation will be wasted. Thomas Paine, very similar system. This is a roof mounted system. The district is already doing a roof replacement as part of that project. We're anticipating about an 85% or so offset. And the reason we say percent or so is that we don't have the, since it's a new building addition over there, is we don't have those utility bills, 12 months of those bills. So based on our typical elementary school, that is what we anticipate. And this is a way to protect the new recent roof investments made by the district by putting a 25-year warranty product on top of it.
the solar panels are all put on the roof with an aluminum framing system with ballast blocks. We've used it quite a bit. In fact, Lakeland is completely covered. All their roofs are full of them. So you don't have any penetrations of your nice, brand new 20-year roof, which makes some people pretty happy that we don't have any penetration. And they don't move, or, I mean, there's no issues with our high winds here. We do them a lot, but they are called ballasted on a framing system. We'll submit some stuff so you can see what that looks like. But that's how they're installed. And we've also had a structural engineer besides myself. So we had an independent party come up and look at the structure of the two buildings to ensure that adding the weight of the ballast in the modules didn't have an effect on your building. And we got a certified letter from John that everything's okay.
All right, so there's this slide, and the next slide is kind of a summary slide of the cost and savings. So participation, all local labor, local made in the USA modules. Project cost is roughly $3,379,703. If this project was financed, the Inflation Reduction Act reimbursement would be $901,000. But because this project is not financed, that amount will be about 6% higher, so about 1,061,000. I think you've got my, this is my copy. 1,060,000, so 40% of the solar cost. The solar renewable energy certificates is 722,000, and the Ameren, Illinois rebate is $184,000. The needed roof repairs, we're anticipating that will be avoided capital costs of about $831,000 for net life cycle savings of about $1.7 million back to the district. And with the additional Inflation Reduction Act savings, that will put the payback less than 12 years with the roof warranty and then made in the USA modules. So kind of this is the summary of the costs and savings of the project. And if there are any questions, we're certainly open to try to answer them.
We kind of buried the lead because these limited time incentives, cashback, and rebates is $1.8 million in this case. So if we were doing this a year from now, we're not sure the federal program would still be there. We believe it could be, but the acceptance rate for the Inflation Reduction Act is so high that it's tripled what the government had thought. So it's really good because it's reducing carbon emissions significantly. But when the money's out, the money's out. So. And then we have the state program, which is the solar energy credits, which really come from an agreement with ComEd over the nuclear plant. So that's a limited time program too. So, and then the rebates on the inverters, probably will be here for a while. But this is really in my 40 years that I've ever seen a program with this kind of subsidy to it. So it's exciting. And it's kind of driving a lot of the other school districts.
Thank you, Bob.
Right. Board members, any questions for the representatives from Verigy?
I earlier watched the presentation from April, and one of the questions that was brought up from someone, I don't remember, maybe, but it was about asbestos. That was supposed to be addressed later on. So did you have an answer to that question?
What's the question?
Whether
Are we dealing with any asbestos?
Wiley.
No, there will not be doing. All right, and one of the reasons we don't have to deal with asbestos is there are new roofing products out. And so when you tear off a roof, you have to deal with it because usually the edges have asbestos in them. By coating the edges in the roof, you don't have that issue, and the areas that are wet are out in the middle of the roof, so we don't have an issue with asbestos. Now, we will double check all that before we get started by taking core samples. But that is, I've been doing roofs here for 40 years, and usually in the middle of the roof it's not an issue. It's just the perimeter of the roof, so we have that issue with tear-offs. But
I do want to point out that this is a no change order price. So if we miss some insulation that we didn't capture in the infrared analysis, or if there's asbestos in the roof, that we own that responsibility.
All right, thank you. And
you
any
do realize that we do all the paperwork for all the grants and everything. All we do is talk to Randy and get our work done, basically send in a schedule, meet with the board when we're asked to, but all the ROE, grants, SREC, all that stuff is done by Verigy.
Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
With Katie not here, I don't know that there's an update regarding how we're going to pay or afford what is due. Does anyone have an update from her?
Yeah, actually, so she's on vacation in the Grand Canyon. As she was driving between locations, she emailed me. So we're not borrowing any money for this. So this is all being paid from our 1% sales tax money, the pay-as-you-go funding. And I think it's because we're not borrowing money, we're getting an increased rebate from
That's
from
correct.
the government
Yes,
as
sir.
well.
That's what I meant to say before. I just kind of butchered the number.
So yeah, so this isn't something that we're going to be paying interest on over that 12-year period. We're paying with cash on hand. Go ahead, Robbie.
Well, so the question that was just asked about the asbestos and the insulation. So if the wet spots are of a core sample that has asbestos in it, do you then leave it in there, or do you take it out and replace it?
We have to take the wet out.
So you have to take the wet part out.
And if it has asbestos in it, which
Yeah.
we will test, which I highly doubt, but if it does, we have to pay a removal company to remove that section of the roof, and the roofer then patches that section. Yeah, we have asbestos removal contractors that work
All
directly.
right. Well, why do you highly doubt there's asbestos in there? Because this is insulation from 1957, I believe.
Because the insulation in 19, it's the adhesives and the edging insulation that's usually used. Do you have a report otherwise? I haven't.
No one's ever bored into the roof to look, I guess. Or has someone?
I mean, has anybody ever tested it?
I don't know. You're the first one to look, it seems.
That's what Ideal's planning to do when they come in, with August, I believe, is to do all the sampling.
So Ideal is going to sample? All right, Steve Rock?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can get with them and have them do our samples, if that's what you want, or we may do them beforehand, just so we can keep the project moving. And we would call Ideal to do that. It would just be a special trip for them. If they're the school district's abatement design engineer, then we want to use them. Now, they wouldn't do the removal or anything, but they would be the person who tested.
And the other question, kind of the last question led into my other question, and that is, as far as where, all these rebates going into the ed fund afterwards, when we discussed this in May or April or whenever that was, I was pointing out how it seemed like we were using, fund-rich, building funds or, facility funds to then feed into to make money for the ed fund. And then I think Paul had commented that that would be a discussion we had at a later time as to where that money actually went. So is this proposal we're voting on today, because it says on that memo to feed into the ed fund, is that a vote to final feed into the ed fund, or is that a discussion we're having later today, right now, or in the future?
We can certainly have that discussion right now. I mean, the proposal that's recommended by administration is to do just that. I think it'd be possible for us to put them into our building fund, but I mean that is where we're cash rich already. So I'm not sure that would be, from a balance sheet point of view, a recommended thing for the district to do.
And it's a pretty common practice when the district is not borrowing funds to where we need it the most. We spend the most money out of our ed fund, so it makes the most sense to put incoming funds into our ed fund to help fund all the additional positions and things that we're doing in the district. So yes, that is our recommendation.
I ask that question because if you look at as a return on investment, I think seems like it would be quicker if it went back to the facilities fund than to a different fund, because they're different budgets. If it was all one wallet paying for everything, then it wouldn't matter. But because you have different slots, that's how you have to look at it, I think.
So it's really not all one wallet. They're very they're very specific rules about what we can spend out of each fund. And if we're getting $1.6 million from the Inflation Reduction Act, it would be as good stewards of that money to put it toward the positions that work directly with our students is our recommendation.
Right. Any other board members have questions or comments on that particular topic? I mean, we could also discuss it when this comes up for a vote later tonight. All right, are there any other questions for the Verigy team? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I did want to say, Gordon's driving back to the St. Louis area. He is a 2-day-old new dad.
Yeah. My mother-in-law says thank you for getting me out of the house.
So his wife gave him permission to drive to be here, so get in the car and drive back.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all.
very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our second report tonight is our school resource officer program review.
Okay, and I'm going to invite Officer Robertson and Officer Burnett up to the front. And Lori, John has the most, the updated one, correct? Hopefully. So, since we have new board members, Chad and Michelle, I am going to go ahead and give them just a little bit of an overview since they've not been here for part of our SRO conversations in the past. So this is a year-end review. We had a mid-year review at the request of the board, more of a mid-year update, I'd say, in January. So I did want to mention, too, in case you've heard, I don't know that we've said this at the board level yet, but our administrators know this, and both the city. So we were approached by the city a couple weeks ago because they have some staffing shortages right now. A couple people on maternity leave, some staff members that have been injured and are on desk duty. They approached the district and talked with us about utilizing our SROs during the summer. Normally they're in training, they're at summer school, but right now they are both back on patrol for the summer at the request of the city, really to help cover some of those staffing shortages. They were prepared for this and aware, so they were able to get some of their other additional things that they usually do in the summer done before the end of the year. Katie and I will be meeting with the city to talk about all the financial pieces and what that all means. But for right now, it was important for them as part of our partnership that they are helping the city in a more larger capacity than they normally do in the summer. One of the things that we did talk about and agree to, and we've already had to do this a couple times this year, is if we need them at the high school or middle school during programming, that if a 911 call is made, which we already had to do that last week, then they would be the people responding to that call. And so we've already had to, Ms. Rinkenberger sitting there, we already had to do that once already. And Officer Burnett was the person who came and addressed the issue at the high school. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that. If you've heard that, I don't know that we mentioned it at the board level, but our administrators were all aware of that, staff were aware, the city, and so that's a nice thing about having a partnership and an agreement where we can work together to problem solve and help one another. So I did just want to share some additional information for our new board members. So John, you're driving for me, right? So what is a school resource officer? And again, Lola, Ben, Sherry, if you have questions, I did keep this pretty short because it is meant to just be kind of an end of the year review. I'm not going to go through the whole intergovernmental agreement that we have with the city. We are in the middle of a 3-year agreement. This is year 2. So a school resource officer, by federal definition, is a career law enforcement officer with sworn authority who is deployed by an employing police department. For us, that would be Urbana Police, or an agency in a community-oriented policing assignment to work in collaboration with schools. The primary goal of our SRO program is to maintain a safe learning environment and build positive relationships in our school communities at both UMS and UHS. Our SROs, and we talked a lot about this at the initial conversations that we've had for the last 3 years, but we are very committed to our SROs fostering positive relationships between youth, if you could go to the next slide, John, and police, and strengthening police community connections, supporting safe learning environments by protecting students and staff from high threat situations that either start inside the school or from outside the community. And we have experienced both, if you could go back one, both of these things this year. So they both have had to get involved in situations that happen, that come to the building, and situations that are happening inside the building. Our SROs are trained specifically to work with students. They go through a lot of additional training that I don't want to say regular officers or a typical officer on patrol has not been through some of the additional training that they have on threat assessments, working with young people, trauma-informed situations. But they have additional training specifically to work with students and intervene in only specific high-threat situations. As is, I think, some confusion sometimes is, if you go to the next slide, our SROs are not in our schools to put out fights. Now, to stop fights. You will see some data about fights, but that is not their primary role. We have administrators there for this. We have a principal. We have assistant principals. We have student interventionists who their primary role is to engage in the behavior matters with students. However, there are instances where a fight escalates or gets to a higher level where we do rely on our officers to step in and help keep everybody safe and make sure people aren't getting hurt. So their primary role is not to engage in behavior with students. And we collaborate. They collaborate with me. They collaborate with the building administrators, Dr. Norton. So we have a very collaborative, problem-solving relationship, and we talk with one another before we make decisions about arresting students. And we do everything that we can to divert our young people from the criminal justice system whenever we can. So that's just a little background. I know it is not the full 12-page agreement, but just I think the high-level things that I wanted our new board members to be aware of. So what are some of the SRO ongoing duties that our SROs that we're really proud of that they do? So they are the liaison between the police department and our school district. They help inform us of safety concerns, incidents that happen after hours and on weekends, which we're not privy to a lot of that. So we really do rely on them if there are things that they hear about from patrol or arrests that were made. Sometimes we have students who have had family members that are arrested, and we would have no way of knowing that when the student comes to school, that maybe this is why they're upset or experiencing some additional trauma because maybe something happened at their house on Saturday night that, you know, as school members we wouldn't be aware of. So we really rely on them to be in that liaison role for us. They also serve as liaisons between the schools and the juvenile detention center to gather information and maintain a connection with the students and their families. They also are connected with probation and some of those other services. They're both members of the school threat assessment teams. They are members of our district crisis committee and our crisis teams at the school level. They're resources for students navigating the court system who often have legal questions and come to them. Officer Burnett works with our driver's ed program at the high school. They both give countless rides to students who need additional safety measures or transport home back and forth for whatever reason. They attend meetings on site when possible threats or safety concerns are made. Of course, we would expect that they confiscate paraphernalia, drug paraphernalia, any weapons, and just assisting students and staff with police-related incidents that might happen on our property. So that is not a comprehensive list, but I'll just say a kind of a snapshot of some of the ongoing duties that both Officer Robinson and Officer Burnett have done for us for the last couple of years. So now I am going to stop talking, and they are going to share their end of the year in review data. I know one of the things that has always been a high level concern for our board is the school to prison pipeline and how many students are we arresting and what are we arresting students for. As I said earlier, our goal is not to arrest our young people, but to get them into services and divert them to other resources in the community whenever we can. So I'm going to let Chad and Michelle talk a little bit about some of the data that you'll see on the next couple of slides, and then take any questions from the board. Do any board members have any questions for me about kind of duties or our agreement?
Any
Okay.
questions for the superintendent?
All right. I think I have the UHS slide first, Don, maybe in there. Yep, okay. Can Chad see it if you? Okay, can you see that screen? Yeah. Okay.
As you see at the top, first of all, my name is Chad Burnett. If you haven't met me, it's nice to meet everybody here. I've been the resource officer since we started the program at the high school. I enjoy my time there, built a lot of relationships. I will touch real quickly on what Dr. Ivory Tatum stated about Michelle and I being on patrol. We happened to be on a miscellaneous call together yesterday. We had one of our students across the street observe us out there in blue uniforms, who in the middle of the call comes over and gives both of us a hug. So it is there to show that we are building some relationships and getting through to some students. So it was nice to see her. She's yelling at us from across the street as we're trying to conduct our business with what we were doing, but it worked out fine. So that's just an example of what's some of the kids, the respect we have amongst them. So. Well, this year we had 30 incidents generating police reports. Unfortunately, those included arson, battery, sex assault, theft, threats, inappropriate videotaping, and found articles. Those are incidents that occurred in the high school. 3 of those resulted in Youth Assessment Center referrals. Unfortunately, 8 of those resulted in arrests. Not all the arrests occurred on site at the high school, but maybe the arrest took place later at a student's home. We went and located the student after the fact, just to keep it away from the campus. We had several medical calls this year requiring ambulance assistance. Some of those we have some students and a staff member with seizure disorders. We dealt with that several times. Unfortunately, we also dealt with some suicidal threats, having to have students transported for mental health evaluations. I assisted with that at least 3 different times. As far as the vape and paraphernalia, between staff and myself, I know I destroyed 51 vape devices this year. There's probably a lot more that weren't destroyed, but 51 is what we came up with and confiscated. I had staff generate a report for me on fighting incidents and referrals. I had 205 incidents of gross misconduct. Gross misconduct, maybe Ms. Rankenberger, when she steps up, can talk more about how that's labeled and what the titles shows. But verbal aggression, I guess towards staff or students both. It can be anything disruptive to the learning environment, any weapons type things, the paraphernalia, if they have cannabis, all of those things can be included in gross misconduct. So that's not just fighting incidents. That's not what that stands from. We did have 110 fights. Those fights included with and without injury. And then we had 127 students involved in the 205 incidents that are listed up there. So out of the student body, we had 127 different students involved. Obviously, that isn't a match, those 2 numbers, so some students were involved in more than one thing. I just listed up there, I do collaborate with the social work team to assist them with services from SAS, DCFS, and the Youth and Center for Family Solutions. We have issues with domestic violence. Students will bring that in and report it at school. we get them the services that they need while they're there. Suicidal threats result in we have to contact SAS to get them the right care. Youth and Center Family Solutions, maybe someone is afraid to go home, so we have to contact them and get them services, get them involved so that we can take measures to keep them safe away from the building as well. So there are multiple other things that we do in the building as what Dr. Ivory Tatum listed. I work sporting events, football, basketball. I've been to volleyball, soccer. I tried to make every event. I never reached swimming or diving. I didn't get to those. Most of the outdoor events, I was definitely at least, once for each team. I tried to represent everybody. I don't know if there's other things I listed on. Let's see. No, I mean the rides home, I think I do a lot of that, probably on a daily basis. I had a certain student that asked me every day to take him home. He just needed a ride, wanted to go. Sometimes I dropped him off at work, sometimes I took him to his home, but he needed a ride every day. But I get requests from the nurse, the school nurse, admin, student interventionist, if they can't get a hold of a parent, or they can get a hold of a parent can't get there. They ask me if I'm willing to take them. If the student's sick, am I willing to take? I always take them home if they need to get home, so they can get home safe. But outside of that, I mean, there's lots of things that I do that probably aren't listed. Whatever's needed, I try to step in and provide assistance in whatever capacity that I can. So that my main goal is to try to work as a team and work with everybody, and I do what I can to support everybody there. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
And if I could add one thing, and I don't know if you're being modest, but this past year we had several incidents of threats of violence, bomb threats, and lots of interactions with a large number of law enforcement, including the FBI. And I can't have imagined how we would have handled that all without you being on the scene. So thank you personally for that.
You're welcome, John. But that wasn't all me. I had assistance from the entire police department with those incidents, and they were overwhelming. But we handled those in the first semester, and I know we discussed those incidents the first time that mid-year review. So I didn't really touch base at this time. So, but we did have a lot of that, unfortunately.
Go ahead, Rob. You have a question for Officer Burnett?
Yes. Do you have any information about how many items may have been confiscated through the metal detection system? Or if it's your thoughts on the usefulness of it, or?
Sure. I did not have to confiscate our metal detection system, and John, maybe you can help me better with this, is set up primarily to identify barrels of firearms, round objects that would resemble anything high-density metals that would resemble a firearm, or anything that consists of firearm materials. The barrel, ammunition, sometimes, those types of things. I never confiscated any type of firearms. The vape devices, obviously, they get through. They're not all metal. Some of them are hard plastic materials. I did take some knives away at times that have gotten through, but small pocket knives, but I don't know that the metal detectors are set up to deter that from coming in. Now, a large knife, yes, it's going to stop that. A small pocket knife, I think that can be carried through. Unfortunately, they get through. We didn't have any incidents where a knife was drawn on anyone or anyone threatened anybody with a knife, but I saw it, I confiscated it, and just removed it from the student. As far as the usefulness of them, I do think they are a good deterrent. We do have a lot of Unfortunately, we've had a lot of instances outside of the school building in the community with gun violence, and we hear rumors, nothing proven, that we have students leaving firearms out of the building because of the metal detectors and not bringing them into the school, and maybe going and finding them later after school is over. And I think one other thing I would like to just touch on briefly is the number of fighting incidents that we did have. I would say the majority of them were first semester and maybe the first couple months of the second semester. And we had some unfortunate incidents in the community where we had some safety issues. We had a student who was shot and killed. All of those things brought a sense of fear to some of our students. We had some students removed from the building for certain incidents. But the last 2 months of the school year, I believe we had 4 fighting incidents. So that 110 was very early on, well, throughout, until, unfortunately, maybe the students were just, that's enough, you know, we're going to start trying to do this right. But we also had an uptick in hallway presence and the way things were handled within the building, which all made a difference. And it got better as we went, which was the goal. It's always the goal is to get better. And I think having 4 incidents in the last 2 months, that was nice. It gave kids a sense of, I'm going to go to class, I'm going to go where I need to be, I can get there, and I don't have to walk through a crowd of a fighting crowd or anything like that. So it did get better as the school year went on.
Go ahead, Chair.
Hi. How did this data compare to last year's data regarding incidences, or do you have a sense? Not exact numbers, but do you have a sense?
Sorry. I would say, based on the threats and everything else, the total accumulation of this year, my year was more stressful this year and with what I had to deal with in the building. But I don't know as far as the fighting numbers. I would say the fighting numbers were probably higher also this year, but the arrests and things were similar, I would guess.
So for two of the higher level data points, last year we had 15 incidents generating police reports. This year we had 30. And we had 10 youth assessment referrals last year compared to 3 this year, and 4 arrests compared to 8. So.
Right. Any other questions for Officer Burnett? All right. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Officer Robinson. I'm the SRO at the Urbana Middle School. I started in September of 2019. From there, I just want to say that Chad and I are going to training this summer. We are getting an advanced SRO licensure, and we are also getting a licensure in adolescent mental health, which will help us navigate more of our mental health needs within the school district. So I'm going to go by their numbers that we have on the board. So we had 6 incidences generating police reports. I do want to state this, that a lot of our police reports were coming from incidences that were happening on the MTD buses. A lot of our major fights happened on the bus because we got the word out to the students that, yeah, you can't, we kept them from fighting in the school, so they take it to the bus. Some of these reports are actually happening at a bus stop. So once a student gets off the bus, they are still under our jurisdiction is what we call it. So we had a lot of the incidences that these reports are coming aren't necessarily in the school. It could be to or from the school. So the 13 youth assessment center referrals, that was mainly first semester. That was the reason why it's so high is because a lot of the fights that we had are what we call mob action. So it was more than 2 people on 1. A lot of our major fights in the beginning of the school year, it was 6-on-1. We had one that was 6-on-1. We had another one that was, I want to say 4 or 5-on-1. And we had one fight where there were probably 8 and 3 different fights going on at the same time, trying to wrangle that. So when we have fights that are that and it causes a major safety issue for the entire student body, in the middle school we generate reports, and that's where we have to unfortunately take it up to the next level where the YAC referral comes in place. Now, none of mine are transfers. Most of my YAC referrals consist of I meet with the parents or speak with the parents on the phone with admin, and at that time they're notified that there will be a referral. So it's kind of, and most parents understand, and a lot of our referrals are from other parents that are demanding something more be done outside of the school district. And when that is a recommendation of a parent who their child is a victim, we have to follow through with that. 11 safety plans were written due to a lot of confrontation in the community. A lot of ours is coming from social media. That's happening overnight on Snapchat or Instagram Live. It seems to be the new way to go about it, and things happening on the weekends. So a lot of bad mouthing and talking to one another and making plans to fight, what we call on site. So as soon as they see the person in the hallway, it's just on. The safety plans that get put in place sometimes are before, like we know that it's happening, so we put the kids on safety plans, keep them out of the hallways, give them a few extra minutes to prevent some things. Some of those times it's put on afterwards. A safety plan can mean anything from they have a special place to eat at lunch because it's a safety issue being in the cafeteria. There's also passing periods. We have escorts for some of these students, not being in the hallways, not being on the pass list, those. We had 7 knives confiscated. Now, none of these knives were used as a threat. They were all the same thing that Officer Burnett, unfortunately, we don't have metal detectors, so it kind of comes out to play that another student says, hey, so-and-so's got a knife in their book bag or on them, and then we go and confiscate them. Most of them were little pocket knives that you can buy at Walmart. We had 10 look-alike toy guns confiscated. We had one that was an airsoft gun that looked exactly like the gun that I carry. There was no any kind of toy markings, no orange markings, nothing on that particular gun. But all of the 10 guns were the first semester. They were not second semester. We had, it looks like 43 vaping device confiscated. That being said, that's going to range from, we had a lot of weed pens is what we call them. Vapes are technically tobacco. Weed pens for them, yes. And the middle school, we have weed. And a lot of kids that come to school under the influence, unfortunately, still at my level. A lot of those were tobacco, and 6th graders were, it's across the board, 6th, 7th, and 8th were taking tobacco vapes. We had 5 alcohol-related incidences where either we had alcohol in the school that was confiscated during lunchtime, or we had students that were intoxicated within the school. 12 transports. I took a lot of that's going to be the beginning of the year, and it was reoccurring students. Some of that was their safety plan, so they had to leave a good majority before even high school let out because of some of the situations. We had to have them off campus and away from the school to make the general, our other population safe. A lot of my transports in second semester was probably me leaving school and it's, hey, Officer Robinson, I missed the bus, can I get a ride home? So I'm kind of end up becoming the taxi service. We go from there. So we had a total of 201 fights. That being said, the way that our admin calculated is any kind of aggression. We have a play fighting situation going on in the school. It became a game. So play fighting is, it starts out as a play fight and you're supposed to be playing around, and then it gets worse. We had an incident where a kid did get knocked out and ended up with a concussion, and we had to have an ambulance, and it was just kind of horse playing, which turned serious. And that's the right punch or slap. So a lot of that is that, or any kind of aggression. So any kind of assault, or a kid just gets mad at another kid and just lops off and hits him in a classroom. That's what that is. Like I said, the 3 mob actions, we had 1 in the school, and then the others were on the bus, on the MTD buses. I've done some home visits in the beginning of the first semester. We didn't do any second semester. I work with the social work team. I've done a lot with youth for the Youth and Center and Family Solutions. I have a lot of runaways in the junior high. So we brought them in to work with these students. Like Officer Burnett said, when you work with them, it's kids that don't feel safe at home. That's not what it is on my end. It's kids that don't want to go home, and there's not enough for DCFS to keep them out of the home. So it's a matter for Youth and Center of Family Solutions to come in and kind of mediate and work between the student and the parents or guardian to try to get the kid to go home. And so they came in, we had a couple students, they came in weekly and met with and continued giving support. We've done several SAS. Unfortunately, DCFS, a lot this past semester, reoccurring families. So that's kind of where we're at. DCFS, it's easier for me to work with them sometimes than it is the school staff, and when the school staff is not getting somewhere, a lot of times they come to me. That being said, there was a lot of times that I spent time at school until 6, 7 o'clock at night with parents who were dealing with DCFS. So DCFS gets called, the students at the school, they come to the school, I'm helping console and actually be with the parents and try to give them a better explanation on why things are going the way that they're going. SAS is our mental health program. That's going to be basically anybody that's having any kind of suicide ideations or self-harm. We have a wonderful mental health group at the middle school. So SAS is very rarely, and I think very rarely called, and when it is, it's a lot of outsourced resources rather than hospitalizations. So that's where we're at.
So Member Langendorf, just to give you, so before you ask, I've got it here. I kept it open. So John, if you could go back to the UMS, what was there? So in comparison, last year there were 14 incidents generating police reports compared to 6 this year. 10 youth assessment center referrals compared to 13. And there were 3 arrests at school last year. There was a large group fight involving parents and students, kind of a pretty big melee, compared to 0 arrests this year at UMS.
And 2 of those, and out of those 3 arrests, 2 of those arrests were adults.
Adults, yes.
That were on scene, so
Yeah.
they weren't students.
All right, board members, any questions for Officer Robinson? Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, just want to thank you all for what you're doing. I just wanted to know if you think at all that having nothing to do after they leave school has anything to do with a lot of the things that go on in the school building.
So, yes and no. The problem is that we do have programs. The issue is the students that need those programs, they're not going to go to those programs. That's your biggest. That's the biggest issue I see. During our sports seasons in the middle school, we have students, of course, that behave. Once that's up, we go back to our old behavior. There are several community partners that have places for kids to go after school. Unfortunately, some of those places require parent involvement, and we have most of them that need them. They're not parent involvement. Parents aren't there to sign off, or it comes down to transportation afterwards. So it's once it's over, it's the transportation becomes the issue. And that's where we need to figure something out, because if there was a place for them to go, it would be less on my end. I can't, high school is a completely different level.
any questions? I have one, I guess, for both of you. When you hear about incidents in the community, or when there's been community, something going on that you hear through social media, especially over the weekends, how do the two of you coordinate with building administration to come up with a plan of action for deterring anything happening in the building?
For us, for me, it's the first step is a lot of times they already know because they're receiving emails from parents, and then I come in on the other hand of like, this is what happened in the community, either police involvement or not. If we know that something is going to go down, the safety plans come in play. A lot of times we're like, for me, I'm there at 7 o'clock in the morning, so it gives us time to get things in order. Admin gets together, we put people on safety, we put them on a safety plan. As soon as students start coming to school, we start pulling people and start separating them and trying to get our restorative practices in place. So we try to start getting our circles going, counseling going. Why are we doing this? Can we prevent this? Now, there's a lot of times where we have them and they're not gonna stop, and the only thing you can do, unfortunately, is to send them home, because it's a matter of, we can spend all 7 hours of our class periods preventing it, and it's that one time that you turn your back or there's a slip up and it breaks loose, but you can't keep kids out of school to prevent it. So it's kind of one of those things where you got to do the best you can, and just, it happens, and that's where it is. But so far we've been on it. There's anything that's outside social media with parents. We have a lot of things that are, and for me, I have a large group within the community that it's happening outside in the community and it's coming into the school. And so we've had parents that come in daily or every Monday morning, they're coming in, and a lot of it is because, and I'll say this, they're not getting the answers they want when they call police, and they're hoping that I can do something inside the school and try to prevent things from going on outside of the school, and we do the best we can. So
I think it's very similar for the way we handle things. I try to identify anybody involved. If there's a police report that's been generated, I get names. I notify admin of who was involved. Dr. Ivor Tatum, I let her know. We text frequently after school hours about certain situations. Our student interventionists, once admin knows, are informed. They have a really good relationship with most parents. And they're able to contact them, talk about the situation prior to, and most times they'll require that student and a parent come in together if they're coming back to school, if they have not been arrested or done something to that extreme, that they will come in together, have a conversation, and see if they're willing to meet with the other people involved, if it happens to be a fight or a social media thread or whatnot, to see what's taken place, and then we just kind of go from there, circle around, and we can put contracts in place with students. We use that a lot. Doesn't often work at the high school level, but that is one thing that they do is social contracting, that just no contact with that person, and it's kind of like an order of protection on the street, but it's just within the school. It's not a legally binding thing. Obviously, it's just a school disciplinary thing. So, but we do try to stay ahead of it in that sense.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for being here late, knowing you have to work all day tomorrow.
Our next administrative report is 10.3, our equity audit presentation.
So Dr. Caffey, our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, is going to come up and introduce Dr. Dubio.
Good evening. Once again, I am Dr. Braden Caffey, Director of Diversity of Equity and Inclusion for Urbana School District 116. Tonight, we are excited to welcome back Dr. Yvette Dubio, who will share with us an overview of our recently completed equity audit, which has and will serve as the foundational document for our equity action planning sessions, which began on June 13th, 2023, and will conclude later this summer. For the benefit of our recently appointed board members, and others who may be unaware, Dr. Dubiel is the CEO and Chief Equity Officer for Systemic Educational Equity, LLC, a full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm that offers a wide range of supports and services such as equity audits, equity assessments, equity action plans, customized coaching, and professional development. Dr. Dubiel currently leads the Illinois Coalition of Education Equity Leaders and is a member of the Illinois State Board of Education Diverse and Learner-Ready Teacher Network. Please receive our partner in achieving educational equity, Dr. Yvette Dubiel.
Thank you, Dr. Caffey. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. As you can see, the presentation does automatic closed caption, but we are reliant on PowerPoint's closed caption, so it may not be always accurate, but it's a nice tool for folks who may be following along, and it may go a little bit too fast or want to go back and review. It offers an ability for people who participate in presentation to also read along as they are hearing the information. So again, I am Yvette Dubiel, and I am excited to present to you the overview of the equity audit that was conducted during school year 22-23. A few things to recognize as I go over this brief overview. First, what was the purpose of the equity audit? So even though it's encapsulated in the comprehensive report you all receive, I'm going to go ahead and reiterate the purpose. The purpose of an equity audit is to identify areas of strength and needed improvement with particular attention to traditionally marginalized groups. It is a fact-finding process that aids in the development of tangible recommendations to mitigate inequities. The equity audit process engages the collection and analysis of comprehensive quantitative data with critical qualitative information. The expected outcomes of an equity audit is the development of a strategic, accountable, measurable, and sustainable action plan. For this particular overview, a few things to also recognize. First, this could be in no way in lieu of the report that was received. This is designed to provide an overview of the process, some of the quantitative and qualitative data, and then the overall equity findings, some recommendations, some considerations. In the recommendations and considerations, both in the report and for tonight, it is not an exhaustive list. With the equity audit itself, it also needs to be highlighted that it is not exhaustive. It allows us to identify facts based on the data that is presented to us. And even then, there may be opportunities that are not as highlighted or prioritized as we would like, but these are the high impact information based on that quantitative and qualitative evidence. So a reminder to the process. The equity audit is a 9 to 12-month process. And before we kick off an equity audit, the district must assemble a team. This team we refer to as a district equity leadership team. For tonight's presentation, I will refer to this team as DELT. Some district may call it something else. That's absolutely okay. The team will receive some district leadership will receive some recommendations as to who may be some members that could be part of that DELT. I am meeting with DELT only one time during the audit process. The purpose of the DELT is key because every equity audit is customized for a client. I have had numerous equity audits with neighboring districts, and they can look very different. And that's because it needs to be differentiated for the resources and the demographics and the abilities and of that particular organization. So the DELT comes together for a full day and are helping to develop directions in 3 major areas. The first thing the team is doing is completing a needs assessment. The needs assessment is where the team is evaluating the district at this high impact level in 10 major areas against the associated rubric. They're identifying areas of strength. They're providing ratings to different areas, justifications for those ratings. And if those ratings are not robust, providing opportunities, suggestions, considerations on how to improve that component. The second task with DELT during phase 1 is for them to give me feedback on the quantitative direction of the equity audit. So they receive a bank of about 30 different quantitative sets. We have a lot of conversation about what is prevalent, what is relevant to the district. So some districts I work with are only an elementary district, so a graduation rate wouldn't apply. Some districts I work with are a high school only district, so pre-K information wouldn't apply. So we have conversation about what data sets are relevant, and then the team can also identify additional data sets that are not included in this bank of quantitative data lists that they would like to be included. Oftentimes, the DELT gets very ambitious in identifying a wide range of that data that should be included, and we go ahead and document that on our deliverables and our activities so that we know what to provide to the team. And then the team has some work to do. In that quantitative data, it's typically a multiple year of data, and it's disaggregated by a number of identities. I'll go into it a bit more detail when I talk about phase 2. The last task DELT will complete during phase 1 is to provide me direction on the qualitative direction of the audit. So that means focus groups and surveys will take place. Who should be the stakeholders participating in that? How many stakeholders? We have a particular formula that works based on the number of participants, based on the grade level of participants, as well as the makeup of a respective district. And by makeup, again, elementary, high school unit. The team also decides what do they want me to ask them during the equity audit. This is also important because districts know their organization best. So they will determine what inquiries they would like to be explicitly asked of the participants who participate in the focus group. Now, the team is also given a bank of questions, again, just for suggestions, so they're not starting at nothing, and they have a lot of conversation to ultimately decide the questions that I will ask the stakeholders that they determine will be participating. They also do the same with the survey. The survey audience typically follows with the focus group audience. So, for example, if it's students, staff, and families that participate in focus groups, typically it's students, staff, and families that also are invited to participate in surveys. A thank you to the district equity leadership team. These were the folks that participated in that day of giving me direction, completing a need assessment. Couldn't do it without their assistance, their conversations, their critical reflection, their vulnerability. So thank you, everyone. After phase 1 occurs, phase 2 and phase 3 occur simultaneously. Now, this will take several months to do. First, phase 2. Phase 2 is the district now has their homework on all that quantitative data that was decided upon during phase 1. As mentioned, it tends to be multiple year data, like multiple year data and demographics such as the students, as well as the demographic of students disaggregated by identities that we already have to report to the Illinois State Board of Education, such as identities of race, ethnicity, gender, and our special populations or subgroups, also known as English language learners or multi-language learners, students with an IEP, and free and reduced lunch population. The data, again, is provided by multiple years so that we can identify possible trends. Academic programs, services, and support. Some examples of that data set may be students who have an IEP, and we disaggregate that by intersectionality of perhaps gender and racial identities, as well as students who are participating in honors and AP or different types of accelerated programs, perhaps students in Tier 2 and Tier 3 settings. Student discipline. This could be both discipline and behavior. Students who are receiving in-school and out-of-school suspension, as well as students who are receiving referrals. Academic progress. This can range anywhere from benchmarking, standardized assessments, to final grades. Student absenteeism speaks for itself. In addition, we look at truancy as well as tardiness. The number of languages, every school district has a number of languages of their students as we become a global country. So looking at the list of languages and what percentage of those second language learners are represented in a district. And even the demographics, racial and gender of staff, as well as the Board of Education. So that quantitative data is provided by the district to us. We don't go out and look or fish for that data. That data, a template is provided to the district where they need to upload the raw numbers of that data. Sometimes they give us percentages if the raw numbers are unknown. And then what we do is calculate the percentage. We provide it in the report without comment. It is presented completely impartially. Now, oftentimes the data presented, in fact, all times, the data presented doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with the data. But it is a nice opportunity to see the data in a very comprehensive way. So I want to emphasize that all data doesn't necessarily means something negative. And I have to say that because sometimes the word equity audit seems scary. There are so many negative connotations with just a word audit. It really should be viewed as an opportunity to not only identify those areas of needed improvement, but let's also celebrate them, things we know are working well. So again, that quantitative data, not all pieces will be commented on because there is some glaring high impact need or something that needs to be investigated further. So that data that didn't stand out necessarily as something that needed attention was listed in the report. But again, I want to emphasize there could be something missed. We're looking for those high impact, or sometimes there's recommendations in the report like, there's something to be looked at in this discipline. Doesn't mean that that discipline isn't justified, but it's worthy of further interrogation or investigation to find out why this disparity exists in that discipline. That would give you an example of how that quantitative is critical, but really unpacking the layers for the root causes of a multitude of quantitative data is quite exhaustive. So allowing the district, giving the district permission, fueling the district, probably reinforcing what the district already knows is something that needs to be looked upon. Because frankly, the data that's provided to us should not be new. It's the district's data. So we're just looking at it in multiple years to, again, identify some things that look like they need attention. The third part of the equity audit, or phase 3, again, this is occurring simultaneously during phase 2 because the district has their homework, and now we're conducting the focus group. That is us completely independent of the district. We're conducting them in person and virtually. For your district, there were 3 stakeholders that were identified: students, staff, and families. This was the data. We had total of 13 focus groups of students for a total of 64 kiddos, 10 staff focus groups for a total of 24 participants, 4 family focus groups for a total of 15. This is 27 focus groups in all with 103. Is there a magic number or a number that we should aim for to conduct focus groups? No, not necessarily. There's no research to suggest that an equity audit, which is very limited in the research, unfortunately, needs to have some type of threshold. We do aim, however, to provide as many focus groups within the selected package the organization chooses. So you may be aware that when organizations are interested in conducting an equity audit, it is already predetermined how many focus groups will be taking place, as there are different price markers associated with it. Now, for your district, unfortunately, there were several focus groups where no participants showed up. It is customary for maybe a few absences to occur when a focus group is scheduled. It is very rare in my experience where 0 people attend for a scheduled focus group. And that did occur a few times. So I did provide complimentary, no-cost makeup focus groups and different times and dates in hopes to encourage people to participate. Unfortunately, that still led up to lower attendance rate. I also want to emphasize that sometimes people get really hung up on the numbers of people that are participating qualitative. It can be deceiving. It really is about the quality of information. Because I will tell you, I've conducted almost 1,000 focus groups. And there has been not any organization where some individual, oftentimes many individuals, show up to a focus group and say nothing. So I emphasize that because the numbers don't necessarily mean somebody said anything. Of course, they're encouraged, but sometimes people just want to be present to participate. Now, focus groups participation, as part of the focus group participation, we encourage everyone to participate. Their participation is completely anonymous. In fact, I don't even know any of their names. I don't schedule them personally. That's behind the scenes. There's a lot of people at the district who are organizing those focus groups, who are communicating about them, who are getting permission slips, and I show up to conduct those focus groups. So even though we emphasize confidentiality, we emphasize anonymity, we offer a safe space as best as possible for people to participate. Sometimes people just don't say anything. So what is key is that in the focus group and what they said should be weighted on. And one of the things you'll notice in the report, and one of the things we're very proud of, which is a very tedious process, but I think is important. In many focus or in many reports, especially equity audit reports, in my experience, a lot of the focus group responses are coded as they should be coded and then themized as they should be themized. But what's often rare, again, in my experience, is where the actual quotes of focus group respondents are in the report in large amounts. So oftentimes the auditor can pick which quotes to highlight, and it could be a very small number in comparison to what a lot of statements have been said. And even though it's really difficult to extract 100% of quotes and break that up further, one of the things we're very proud of is we extract approximately 80% of what people say and put it in the report so that the reader gets a real sense of what people said during the focus group. As far as the surveys, these were also distributed. This was a digital form that was distributed. It was completely confidential, and anonymity was also guaranteed. The same number of the same stakeholders that were participating in focus groups were invited to participate in the surveys. The district sent out the communication, sent out reminders and invitations for these individuals to participate. I forgot to mention that part of phase one with the district equity leadership team, they're often asked who should participate in the stakeholders, meaning do we need to conduct any focus groups or surveys in languages other than English? Do we need to conduct focus groups where it's invitation only or first come, first serve or an affinity? In your particular situation, we did all of the above. So we had open-ended, whoever can attend, here's a slot or a couple of slots. We also had some invitation because we really want to hear from you, and then some affinity base. So affinity base is often offers and cultivates a sense of comfort, but the questions are the same. Some of the affinity base, and I have to look up yours because I don't recall, but some of the affinity bases could be a focus group based solely on race, focus group solely based on gender, focus group based solely on multiple language identity, focus group maybe based on students with an IEP. So an individual would have to self-identify and be willing to participate in that particular affinity. Again, they don't have different questions, but it's just to cultivate a sense of belonging. And if you look back at the report, I emphasize the different peer review scholarship that supports affinity-based focus groups, but not only affinity-based focus groups. So again, we really aim for a balance. So this was the total number of surveys in the report. Those the responses to the questions as well as the demographics of the individual stakeholders or the stakeholders was included. We also pivoted the survey responses further, independence. So the reader can look at based on student and a particular building, or staff and a particular year of service, or family and their income level. So it can range, but That detail is very nuanced, and it may or may not, it's difficult to say generalized if it will impact the audit, but people tend to appreciate that detail from the survey responses. Phase 4 and 5 of the audit. So phase 4 is where all the data has been collected and submitted by the district quantitatively. All the focus groups have concluded and the surveys are closed. Now we go in and we analyze this data. It's quite an extensive process. It takes a lot of time, a lot of eyes on it at our end to unpack it. There's an in-between phase between phase 4 and phase 5. The district receives information from me. We're getting close to wrapping up the audit. But we would also like to know one final thing. Could you provide a short historical landscape of the district work when it comes to equity, maybe 3 to 5 years? What does that mean? It could be a bullet point list. It could be a timeline. But what we know is oftentimes, in fact, rare if any, districts are not new in their equity journey. They may not call it equity, but if we have a program like for EL or multiple language students, if we have a program for students with an IEP, well, that is clear evidence of equity. That had to occur because of U.S. Supreme Court rulings. So again, we may not have a stamp of equity on these programs, but we know it is a way to meet students' needs based on who they are, what they are, remove those barriers so that they could thrive in their educational experience. So what we do between that phase 4 and phase 5 is we ask the district, could you give us a short synopsis, again, either timeline or bullet point list of what you have done in the last few years to advance equity at your district. So that's also included in the report. It's nice to see that the equity audit is not necessarily the first time a school district or your particular school district is navigating this. In fact, for your specific district, you have a long, amazing history in this work. And let me be clear, this work doesn't end. This work is a journey. There is no final destination. We constantly aim to give students what they need to thrive, and we need to simultaneously look at ways we could remove barriers that intentionally, inadvertently perpetuate inequalities or inequities. Phase 5. Phase 5 is where the district now gets a draft of the report. And the reason for the draft, they can't change any findings unless, so even if they don't agree with the findings, unless there was an error to the data that they provided me, which then influenced the finding. So for example, years ago, I had a finding for a district that related to discipline, and it had solely to do with the quantitative data. When the district received their draft report, they realized in looking at the draft report and they compared their discipline data that the data that they provided me was incorrect. So when they corrected that data, it sure enough changed the finding in the report. That would be the exception. So that's an example of why that the district gets a report. They also provide feedback on areas where perhaps need clarification, like oftentimes in quantitative data. And as you probably read in the report, there were some years that were skipped, maybe because that data wasn't collected. Maybe we need to emphasize that these were years of COVID. So we would footnote that in the quantitative portion of that particular data set within the report. So they give feedback on that. And if there's any edits or clarifications that they think will help the reader or make the report cleaner, more robust, we welcome that feedback. So then we do that, and then we submit the report to the district for final. Now, how are the equity audit findings come to be? So a few things. First, let me introduce to you the accountability framework. I'm going to take a pause in speaking and just ask you to refresh your memory or read the slide to yourself. So the accountability framework is an opportunity to look at an organization's ability and opportunity to advance equity in a number of different areas. According to the research, we can't just focus on teaching and learning and negate student voice, climate, culture. We can't just think about professional learning and completely disregard systems. So the accountability framework we design and use, is called the 5 strands of systemic equity. And so the equity audit findings are organizing using this accountability framework. So for example, if there's 15 recommendations in the report or findings in the report, it will be organized here. There are 2 or 3 under systems, 4 or 5 under teaching and learning. So what are some example of systems recommendations? Systems is that high impact. This is district level. So this could be anything from a board policy to district calendar, to our hiring practices, to kindergarten registration, to graduation requirements. Big systemic level, high level decision making, high level considerations. So maybe there is an inequity that came to light as a result of the audit. Teaching and learning has to do with academics, grades, assessments, programs, curriculum, resources. Student voice, climate, culture, this could be wide. Everything from discipline and referrals to extracurricular, to trauma-informed, to SEL. Professional learning, that tends to be PD or professional development in the view of equity, and it is wide. So how to meet students' needs based on language acquisition, as well as if we have a student population that is growing, that is unique to our district. For example, this past year, I worked with the district who was getting a huge influx of immigrant students as a result of the war. This was very new to the district. And so we worked closely with them to develop some customized PD so that they can, again, thinking of equity, meet the needs of this unique student population and remove those barriers that may inadvertently perpetuate inequality or inequity. And then family, community as agency. We certainly can do this work ourselves. So tapping into our families, our guardians, our caretakers to help us along the way. So the findings that I'm going to talk about, as a reminder, it's not exhaustive. There will be findings that you think, oh, they were missed. Yes, there will be findings that were missed. And that's why I think the Equity Action Plan is key. It is not an exhaustive list. The findings are based on quantitative and or qualitative data. So what does that mean? Sometimes I'm going to use the discipline example, discipline data quantitatively that doesn't show any disparity when it comes to those identities that we have to already report to ISB. So maybe the discipline data didn't show anything glaring based on race, based on gender, based on special populations. However, qualitative data, focus groups, and or surveys suggested that microaggressions occurring from student to student is rampant, that there was a climate and culture among the students where they didn't feel safe, where school was not a place they wanted to be. So that may lead to a recommendation. So when it comes to recommendations, we don't need both. We need either or both. We also tap into the needs assessment. Remember that district equity leadership team are the ones who know the district best, as also another data set, another data point that can influence a finding. All right, let's talk about the findings. So as I go through the findings, there's multiple findings under each of these strands. Again, not exhaustive. Systems. Implement measurable, accountable, transparent, equity-driven goals and widely communicate to stakeholders. One thing that was very clear in the district equity leadership team and through the focus groups, again, so it was qualitative, was the need for equity-specific SMART goals, that we had some measures and Ps, we had some accountability considerations, we had some timelines attached. So although the district has an extensive history in professional learning regarding equity, book studies, a lot of communication, a lot of dialogue, a lot of commitments in a variety of ways, there seemed to be a inconsistent or not existing or not transparent or all of the above equity-driven goals. So that was one of the findings. The second finding under systems is to develop strategies to hire and retain specialized staff and continue efforts to diversify staff. So when we talk about specialized staff, that came through quite a bit in the focus groups, the need for specialized staff such as dual language, such as paraprofessionals. So those specialized roles, psychologists, school counselors that are in need to continue to have some strategic ways to recruit folks to fill those roles. As far as the racial diversity of your staff, it is against the national norm. It is above the national norm. So continue to diversify your staff. It absolutely is applaud that it is very diverse, both in race and in gender, because the students also commented over and over again how nice it was to see themselves represented in the adults that were working with them. One thing I forgot to mention, let me go back, is when it comes to the accountability framework, they are numbered just for easy reference. So systems is 1, teaching and learning is 2, student voice is 3, professional learning is 4, family community agency is 5. Now, again, each of these strands are important. One is now more important than the other. They all are necessary. So we need goals in each of these to feel that we're moving that needle forward systemically as an organization. So as systems is 1, there were 2 findings. Hence, that's where you see the 1.1, 1.2. If there were additional ones, it would be 1.3 and so on. So teaching and learning is strand number 2. And there were 3 recommendations under that. The first one, to develop a curriculum map for each grade level that includes alignment to learning standards, a scope and sequence, instructional supports, and a rigor for varying levels of learners, embeds cultural linguistic pedagogy and practices, and autonomy for equitable resources. Whew, that's a lot. So what came out of in the qualitative data of the equity audit is the need for some consistency, some transparency in the curriculum. So as you know, curriculum is adopted by school districts in alignment with the state standards. I do not doubt that's already occurring. What is not often clear by the general society, but general public, they often confuse a resource with the curriculum. So for example, if a student comes home with a math book or digital or paper print or otherwise, sometimes greater society thinks that's the curriculum. This math book is the curriculum. That is a resource. The curriculum is set by the district because it aligns with the standards. So the standards determine for us as a district what our curriculum will be. So the district has curriculum resources that align with the standards. What is not clear is the curriculum map that exists so that if I'm a new teacher and I go to the district, that I can see a map. If I'm teaching math, I can see examples of math taught in one place based on the grade level, but in one place where I can see an example of summative assessment, some terminology, some examples of instructional supports, in addition, of course, to the resources, examples of cultural and linguistic instructional opportunities to engage student. So I want to be clear, it is not a script. We have to give teachers autonomy to differentiate and customize the learning. They know their students best, but it is a powerful resource, whether new teacher or veteran, to come to a place and see that this curriculum mapping exists and it already is aligned with the standards. So ideally, it is in-house people that will design that. This is a goal. If the district decides to move forward with implementing the goal, that's not going to come to fruition in a year. This is a multi-year goal. It will be frustratingly slow, but it's such an important one. And one that aims to remove those inequities because we can see some consistency in the curricular expectations. And then there's already a cheat sheet, for lack of a better word, on how to differentiate based on our student needs. Enhance the dual language and special education programs by fostering collaboration on instructional approaches between them, and then develop regular best practices to share with the monolingual and general education classroom. Ooh, another big one. So a few things that came to light. Based on the participants in the focus groups, we had some dual language teachers, we had some special education teachers. there was a sense of disconnect, not only between them, the dual language teachers and the special education teachers with each other, but also them and monolingual. So for example, one of the popular misconceptions is that a student cannot qualify for special education and multiple language EL or dual language supports. That is a myth. Absolutely, we can have a student that is designated with both because that's what they need. So there needs to be some connection between those two and understanding the different services that are offered and how they can support students who, in fact, have both of those designations, as well as the need for monolingual teachers to work and understand the uniqueness of students who are multiple language learners and students with an IEP. So, for example, oftentimes people, general public, even educators, don't understand language acquisition. Well, how does language acquisition work? What are the 4 language domains on how we develop language? How long does it take to, quote unquote, master a language? Why does it differentiate? What does it matter? The origin, the birth origin of the student. Where are the parents involvement? What is the research say if a student enters 2nd grade as a multiple language learner as opposed to a student entering 9th grade? What are the critical differences there? As well as our specialist teacher, so PE, arts, music, technology, those type of specialist teachers that interact with all students. So there was a sense of disconnect of monolingual teachers who happen to work or interact with dual language teachers and or students with an IEP, but don't fully understand how to support the learning. So that disconnect sometimes leads to frustration. That disconnect sometimes can taint a climate and culture. So opportunities for our specialized teachers to work together, as well as to work with monolingual teachers where they don't have students that have any of those, are critical because they're all of our students. And it's going to be important as the population, according to statistics, multiple language students with an IEP continue to grow globally, but particularly in this country. So opportunities for them to connect at every grade. Now, how we embed this, it's going to be like that 2.1. This is going to take time. All of this is going to be frustratingly slow, but coming up with a plan that we know we can commit to year 1, year 2, year 3, and so on. That's always the goal. The last finding for this particular strand examined the root causes of lower academic performance among Black/African American students. So we had several different data sets that informed this, like benchmark, standardized assessments, and grades. And it was pretty glaring that Black and African American students were performing lower than the other peers of different racial groups. So we want to find out why. What is the reasoning, the cause? What can we do to engage students? So me as a teacher, what could I do to be more culturally responsive? What could I do to support students while they're in the schoolhouse? Whether it's intensive peer tutoring, whether it's scaffolding the instruction in a way that allows them to reiterate or regurgitate the learning. But I want to ensure all students are thriving in the learning. But when we have particular groups of students that are not, we need to unpack it further because we don't know if it's biased by instruction. We don't know if it's biased by the curricular resources. We don't know why, and we do not want to make a generalization or assumptions, but we want to unpack it and examine it. So one of the ways we do that is make sure that the looking at that data, the data set, mostly by benchmarks and grading, because those are key. Standardized assessment, those are snapshots, and even benchmarks are snapshots. But looking at and talking and working with teachers who, when we look at their grades, because grades is an indicator where we can monitor it on a more continuous basis. When we look at the grades, whether they're standard based or letter grades, and we talk and work with teachers, what their interpretation is of their grades, what they think the reasoning is, how we can look at ourselves, but also for the students to have that perseverance and resiliency, because it's not one end or the other. It's not just teachers, but of course students. So what are we missing? Why is this the case? And knowing that your Black African American student population is a growing population, we really want to get to the root causes for why this may be occurring. Strand 3, student voice, time, and culture. There were 2 findings, again, not exhaustive, but establish a student equity advisory committee. So one of the things, unfortunately, that did become quite apparent is microaggressions and everyday verbal exchanges, somewhat hostile environments that students felt they were experiencing, that it didn't always feel like they belonged or it was welcoming. And that's it was extracted during the focus group, that became clear during the focus group. But what we want to do through a student equity advisory team is offer proactive opportunities for students to share what's going on. So through a student equity advisory committee or council, or however the configuration that districts decide to implement it, becomes a vehicle for keeping tabs on how we're cultivating the sense of belonging, so all students feel safe and cared for and have those positive, meaningful relationships with the adults in the schoolhouse. 3.2, heighten positive, meaningful connection opportunities with Black, African American, and free and reduced lunch students. What was particularly interesting in the focus group is the students that did identify as Black, African American, or just students based on free and reduced lunch, and this came through the survey. They really felt there was a disconnect. So ideally, PD on how to work with poverty-stricken students, understanding the real disenfranchisement of students who are a free and reduced lunch, and what we can do to mitigate that gap. Not financially, although there's some things that could be done like waiving fees, but academically, because we know, for example, a classic example, if I am of financial privilege, I may have opportunities for my little one to have great experience in pre-K situations right before they start kindergarten, where other families who do not have that financial privilege, their little one is starting kindergarten and may not have that background, that experience, that habit, that ritual, that expectation, that peer interaction. Doesn't mean they're doomed by any means, but what it does mean is that there could be an opportunity. There could be why certain groups of students based on these identity groups are not thriving like their counterparts. One of the challenges, and I have to say, is always going to be difficult. Nobody can never say all Black African American students. No, that's a dangerous assumption. But when we look at that data and we disaggregate that data, and it's quite significant, or it's a clear disparity, we want to unpack it. We can never say all poverty or free or reduced lunch students. But again, when the data is significant or shows a disparity that causes us to pause, we want to examine it. We want to understand why, and then put those pieces in place to address it. Under strand number 4, professional learning, provide mandatory learning opportunities for teachers and the very pedagogical needs of students that contributes to educational equity. Whew, another a big one. So one of the things that came clear as well through the focus group and through the needs assessment, historically, the district has done an amazing job on providing professional learning opportunities and conferences and book studies so staff can build their capacity on educational equity and how to meet students' needs. But it hasn't always been mandatory. Some of it has been optional. Some of it has been mandatory, but not consistently. So a recommendation is, when we are talking about how to best serve our students with an equity lens, is to be sure that we're mandating it and it's not an option. Again, one of those long terms, this is not going to go away anytime soon, but all adults could benefit. And there's an old adage, if you come into eye contact with students, you can benefit on equity training, from just nonverbal communication in your caring ways, to really being empathetic to students, to also being firm with behavioral expectations when necessary as adults in the schoolhouse. And the last strand, certainly not the least, is family and community as agency. Like the student advisory committee recommendation 5.1, establish a community equity advisory committee, or integrate equity and belonging awareness and current parent/guardian collaboration opportunities. There is already a district level parent group, so the district can have the autonomy to either embed equity as a foundational vision and purpose of this work, or create a whole new or develop a whole new equity advisory committee. Oftentimes people want to know, what does that look like? That varies greatly, just like the student team. That varies greatly on what the district wants. What are the resources available? How much time? So if we're putting a team, if we do create a community equity advisory team, I will ask the district, okay, what would be the purpose? Now we got to think about the purpose. Who's going to be part of it? What do we want to accomplish in 1 year? So all of that is conversation that happens to be taking place in the next piece, where I'll be happy to answer questions about it, but the district is moving forward in an equity action plan, EAP, because we love our acronyms. And the purpose of the EAP is where the district team, the district equity leadership team, has been reconvened. There may be some different members. And they've looked at the equity audit findings. They've decided of those findings, which ones they feel like, yes, should be adopted. This is key. And then what's missing. So there is that opportunity to also identify areas that may have been missed in the audit. And they're coming up with SMART goals of what they can commit to do within always, we're going to have a limitation of time, personnel, and resources that they can commit to do in 1 year. That doesn't mean they're going to finish it in 1 year, but the EAP, the first year is a pilot year, so it's 1 year, and then after that, we layer on the years. Whew. All right, I'm going to pause, or I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions.
Board members, any questions for Dr. Dubiel or administrative team? Okay, I guess I have a few. I went over the whole 300-page report, and most of my issues are questions are involving the quantitative data. I don't know if you have the report in front of you or not, but I was looking in particular, I left little markers in here, so you have to dig through my digital copy here. But on chart number 2.15, it shows kind of a disturbing growth in the dropout rate by percentage over the course of the past 5 years. I was wondering if there's any sort of, do we change the way we collect that data, or is this really reflective of the fact that over the past 5 years we really are having more students dropping out?
So I don't, about, as far as collecting the data, I'll turn it over to the district because I don't know how that data is collected. It's just submitted to me for analysis. Maybe they can speak to if it's changed at all. And I would have to look at that specific chart to comment on it myself. But as far as, how that data is collected, I'm going to turn it to the district to see if they can speak to that piece.
Yeah, I would have to say, I know on my little sticky tabs too, Paul, that was probably the most alarming thing in the whole equity audit to me. And so some of that I think is definitely, I think that we have to look at our systems and be asking loads of questions before it gets to that point for our students and how we're intervening.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some immediate thoughts that came to my mind before that gets to that step. But also there's a number of factors that I believe that, we see post-COVID with impacting our students' mental health. And so, yeah, those are real numbers, and it is extremely alarming seeing that. That was, the most significant finding for me, just gut-wrenching, looking at this report.
It stood out for me, too. It really surprised me. In chart 2.28, there's student graduation percentage by special populations. It looked like overall, the trend lines were actually increasing, except in ELL. So I didn't know if that was, what we could do to look at that coming out of this. That's, I guess, more of a comment, than a question. Sorry.
No, that's great because, as mentioned earlier, the equity audit may not capture all that high impact, but right now we're in the midst of an equity action plan. So I know that this would be shared with the district equity leadership team because maybe that is a goal that we need to center on in developing our EAP so that we can look further as to why that's the case. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And sorry, I'm just going to go on. I've got a number of these here. Chart 2.35, something that really caught my attention, was really bothered me, was the fact that if you look at the participation in dual language program by percentage, race, ethnicity, 20% of the students in there are white and only 10% are African American. Where that's completely counter to the fact that we have a plurality of African American students in this district. I was wondering what the district can do to have those numbers be reflective of the balance of students in our district overall.
Yeah. That's going to possibly come through a lot of education for our families. Maybe we need to target our Black African American families before they enter formal schooling, so before they enter kindergarten, because as you know, that's often the time we want to capture them in the dual language program in education about the benefits of speaking multiple languages. Unfortunately, I will say that that is not rare. But considering that your district has a large and growing population of Black African American students, I do think is worthy of looking at how we can outreach more and encourage more of our Black African American families to really consider dual language as an opportunity for their kids.
And there were a couple of charts. I just don't understand how the data is even possible. If you look at chart number 2.36, it's dual language programming disaggregated by gender is showing 99% of the participants are female, which doesn't seem accurate. And then also on a similar issue on chart 2.50, where, sorry, I'm scrolling down to it, where it's showing in 1 year, in 2018, 120% of the CT enrollment in grades 9 through 12 were Hispanic females, which obviously can't be right either. So.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to, so again, this data was provided by the district, but maybe it was something we missed. So thank you for that.
I have a few other things, but I can share them with the administration after the fact.
Yes, please do.
Here. Board members, any questions for Dr. Dubiel or administration? All right. Thank you very much for delivering this report so comprehensively, Dr. Dubiel. And I look forward to continuing the work to get the district where it needs to go.
Thank you for everything you all do. Have a great night.
Okay. 10.4 tonight is our school improvement updates. Dr. Norton.
I'll get us started as John's pulling that up. Just to recap from last time, when you look at that first slide, John. So you will see that we put our toes in the water a little bit, and so as we were building our district goals and our school improvement plans, we utilized the 5 strands of equity, and so that's the umbrella. And then when you look at our district goals and our school improvement plans that will be shared tonight and those highlights, the SMART goals will be developed under each one of those areas. So we've already been doing that work, and our principals our administrators have been working really, really hard on that, even just after the initial review of the equity audit, so that we could start looking at it in that manner. And again, I always, whenever we talk district improvement plan or school improvement plan, I have to always reiterate it's a working document, and it truly is. And in order to make this effective, we really need to look at all these goals and then mirror them within each of our schools. But then our schools also provide some other additional layers. Monitoring at every level is key. It's not something that we put in a drawer and put away for the year and get it back out at the end and look at just what were our findings at the beginning of the year and end of the year. But the data that we collect needs to be embedded within each one of these. So we're constantly reviewing our progress to see where we're at, see which areas we aren't touching on yet. And so that's what we'll be sharing. So tonight, you'll have the packets were shared with the Urbana Middle School plan and Urbana High School plan. And I'm really excited that Mr. Cooper is going to start off with the Urbana Middle School plan, and then Ms. Kearns and Ms. Rinkenberger will share Urbana High Schools. Thank you.
There we go. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So good evening. My name is Derek Cooper. I am the principal of Urbana Middle School. I just want to give a heartfelt welcome to the new board members who I've yet to meet yet, but it's good to be able to get to know you all and be able to share in the collaboration of all the great things that are going on at Urbana Middle School. I also want to be able to just talk about that I'm honored to serve in this position as the principal of Urbana Middle School, and that the trust and support that is shown to me is greatly appreciated. I also want to thank the executive team as I transition. This is my first year as principal of Urbana Middle School, and it's a big job. And the support team I've given from Dr. Franklin, Dr. Ivy Tatum, from Todd, from Kim, from John, Lori too. Lori answers any emails I have really quickly. But no, it's been really great to experience this first year here. And before I get into our school improvement plan and our goals, I just want to go over some brief highlights. I know it's late, but I'll go over some brief highlights. And I also want to thank our team at Urbana Middle School. We have some very dedicated staff, administrators, parents, community partners who are really all part of this job, because it's really not me doing the work. This is a team effort, and it takes all of us to really move the needle with what our goals are. So one of the highlights for this year, before I get into the plan, is that we did our advisory program this year. And an advisory is basically, it's a supportive small environment where students get the opportunity to collaborate with an adult in a small setting. It's a 4-day-a-week advisory. So on Mondays, the students have a morning meeting with a check-in. On Tuesday, they do a social and emotional lesson with some community building. Wednesdays, we don't have advisory because that's our PD or staff meeting in the evening. Thursday is a cool day because the students have opportunity to do check-ins with their grades. They're looking at Skyward. They're looking at High Five, which is one of our behavior management systems. They're also using their notebooks and check-ins and doing some Avid strategies. And then Fridays, the students have some academic support and some goal settings. That starts the week going forward. Some other highlights is our band and strings programs and our art showcases and our performing arts at Urbana Middle School. It's a really highlight for our school. If you've never had the opportunity to be a part of a band or strings performance or art showcase, you should really check it out. There are kids that are just really eclectic. We have some really great artists at our school that are showcasing some really cool things. And in the spring, you get a chance to see Broadway on Vine, which is another just really cool performing arts program. We have numerous academic accomplishments happening. In addition, to the academic accomplishments, we had a new wrestling program that we started at the middle school. And it's really cool to see programs like that don't have necessarily what I call cut programs, so that the students from any ability level or experience level get a chance to be a part of that. And it's really important for me just to kind of highlight some of those things, because what we know and what we see at Urbana and the middle school level is that students that are involved in extracurricular activities, they're involved in sports, they do better academically. They're more invested. They have better relationships with staff, and they do better academically. So it's something that we really want to stress and emphasize for our students. Some of our math accomplishments is that we saw 43% of our 8th graders met their projected growth goals, and I'll talk about that when I go over our goals. We saw that 41% of 7th grade students met their literacy projected growth goal. In Panorama, we noticed that 80% of our students indicated that they have supportive relationships with friends, families, and adults at school, and that's really a point of emphasis this upcoming school year. All right, so for our literacy goal, our literacy goal is there, and we're going to be working on our projected growth goal. So again, we're moving away from percentile ranking, but really focus on projected growth goal, which is more individualized for the student. And one thing we're going to be doing related to literacy is a recommitment to the fact that all of our teachers are reading teachers. So regardless of whether the teacher is a math teacher, whether the teacher is a science, family, consumer science, health, whatever, no matter what their discipline area is, based on our data, we have to be all teachers of literacy. And we're going to be doing professional development opportunities this summer to stress that with our teachers, and it's going to be ongoing in the fall as well. We look forward to doing that collaboration. One of those professional developments are called content area literacy, where we're focused on vocabulary across all of our disciplines at Urbana Middle School. In math, we're going to see the pilot of our new illustrative math curriculum that's going to be in the fall. Our teachers are already started to take part in different professional development opportunities related to illustrative math. I'm just really excited to see the results of that as well. So for our attendance goal, we've got two big things that we're going to be doing. It's going to be revamping what I would call like our tier 1 systems to make sure that we're just really making early and often contacts with parents when it comes to their students, whether their student is there or whether their student is tardy, just making sure that we're just building that relationships that students want to be in school and they want to be in school on time. Another point of emphasis this year is going to be we're going to use a position that we have differently. So we have our SEA positions, which is called like our student engagement advocate position. And we've had this position in the past, and we have a lot of acronyms, as you're going to see in education, right? But we're going to use this position differently to focus on our chronic truancy students. So just really having this person not so much being on the day-to-day, like in school, connecting like with staff as far as like the kind of like how I would describe like how we would use like a dean of students, or this person isn't doing like hallway supervision. We really want this person to really be going out, going to staff, going to students' houses, doing home visits, just really connecting to find out what the wraparound support needed, so that we can kind of build that bridge between that student and family, and just really focusing on our chronic truancy students. And our last one is our social and emotional goal. And our social and emotional goal, we're going to use Panorama again to just track, how our students feel about school, how school is going for them, using that survey data to really see, where it is that we need to make improvement areas. And then the PD we're going to use for that group is we're going to use our positive actions curriculum and our SEL lessons during advisory and throughout our curriculum. Sorry, I know I went through that fast.
Thank you very much. Board members, any questions for Mr. Cooper? Okay. All right. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, and as Ms. Rinkenberger and Ms. Kearns are coming up, you can see that Mr. Cooper spoke with literacy and math, so it's that teaching and learning strand, and student voice with SEL, and then the measure utilizing Panorama, and then systems with looking closer at attendance and the role of the student engagement advocate. Okay.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Christine Rinkenberger. I just finished my first year serving as the assistant principal, one of the assistant principals at Urbana High School. I have watched many late night board meetings, but I've never taken part of one, so I really appreciate you guys now. I definitely appreciated you before, but I appreciate you even more now.
Hi everyone, Melissa Kearns. I officially will be as of July 1, but it looks like I'm starting early. The assistant principal, new at Urbana High School this year. I'm an Urbana alum, so I'm super excited to be here. This is actually my return home to Urbana. I taught at the middle school a few years back, and so this is exciting to be back here with the board and with the district working at UHS.
So while we definitely had some ups and downs at UHS this past school year, I'm always proud, we're always proud to be an Urbana Tiger, and I just wanted to highlight a few of our proud moments that we have so far this school year. So one of our SIP goals this past school year was to increase equitable grading practices by transitioning to the SRL. We had 7 courses this past year, pilot SRL grading and instructional practices. And next year we'll have over 35 courses implementing SRL. And they've been working tirelessly through our staff PDs that have been provided by teacher leaders and the Department of Curriculum Instruction, and have been working in the summer as well on that. I also wanted to highlight our dual language program. We're continuing to add to our dual language program at the high school level. This incoming class of seniors will be our oldest group of students in the program who started in kindergarten and now are going to be seniors. And we're excited to be offering 3 new courses as part of the program at the senior year level. We also collaborated with the foreign language department to offer a high-level 4th year language course as well as a additional offering. We had 2 teachers from Spain this past school year that were instrumental in our multilingual programming. I think literally they got off the plane and came to new teacher orientation the next day. They jumped right in, and they've made quite an impact within our department. We're really lucky to have them. Our, like many of the schools have mentioned, our math department has been piloting illustrative mathematics. For the full school year, Algebra 1 and Geometry piloted, which meant the majority of the math department did have practice in that. Next school year, we will work on implementing the IM curriculum in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. They have absolutely benefited from the PD provided by Janet Moore. We actually started a year earlier than the rest of the district with that offering and have benefited from the curriculum trainings that IM has provided. And we also have some folks that are going to be participating in a multilingual strategy PD next week to help with the IM curriculum. I would definitely be remiss to not mention a few of our student accolades. There's so many that I could mention. I'm just going to mention a few that have happened in this past May. In May, were able to honor and recognize 95 hardworking students with a mayoral recognition program with their service in the community. In addition, we honor mostly seniors, but a few juniors. Each May, we have an honors night program where we honor students that were awarded with scholarships and awards for different contributions that they've made throughout their high school career. And then lastly, we did have 18 students receive the Seal of Biliteracy or the commendation, which we're very proud of. It's a really rigorous process, and we couldn't be more proud of the bilingualism and biliteracy that our students showed on that. So again, just to name a few, but we definitely wanted to highlight a few of those. So moving on to our SIP plan, I'm going to pass it off to Melissa to talk about the reading goal.
Awesome. So you'll see throughout the actual packet that you received, our goals are very similar, comparatively speaking, from literacy to math to SEL and attendance. And that's for a really good reason. One of the things we felt really strongly about was making sure that we had some really big hinge points with our teachers and students and families around data specifically. What we found is that there is a lot of students that we want to reinvest time and space with them on assessment, getting them to do their best on the assessment, showing us the skills that they have, showing us the deficits that we need to fill. And so with that being said, you'll notice that within here, I'll talk a little bit about how the assessment pieces are going to be used. So the first SMART goal is going to be for reading. So for the 2023-2024 school year, we're going to look at the percentage of students who will meet their NWEA MAP achievement percentile on the reading assessment, specifically in informational text. We want to focus there because we feel like informational text, key ideas and details, is a college and career readiness skill that kids are going to need now and throughout their collegiate and even career base. And so we really want to focus specifically on those skills, creating common practices for those skills with our teaching staff, and also investing our kids how important informational text is in their everyday life. So with that being said, we want to look at increasing that by 10% in our achievement percentile. That will give us quite a big of a gap filled with some of the kids who either haven't taken the assessment consistently and or didn't perform as well as we thought they might based on other curriculum measures that they did well on. Doing that, we're going to focus a lot on professional learning communities at Urbana High School. We're going to revisit that quite a bit. We want to make sure that there's lots of opportunities for our teachers to participate in professional learning around engaging 1 to 2 strategies that are really consistently taught through all curriculums. One example could be annotating text. That could be done in almost every single curricular setting. So that's one thing we want to invest time and space in making sure that our learning outcome projections are exactly how we want them to look for our students.
So our next goal is our math goal. We are looking to increase the projected growth goal by 10% as compared to the 22-23 school year. We are really focusing in on the new pilot and the instructional practices. One piece that Janet Moore talks a lot about is the CRA instructional method in mathematics, concrete, representational, and abstract. And so by utilizing those tangible instructional framework partnered with our new math curriculum, we really look forward to improvements in the areas of math. You might note that one of our NWEA goal is percentile points, and the other one is the growth goal. We did that for a few different reasons. One was just logistically, the percentile points allows us to break down into that informational text, which we thought was very useful across all content areas. Where the projected math, the growth goal, we could really hone in on our practices within the math department. Did you have anything else to add about that?
No, perfect.
Okay. So our third goal is our SEL. You may see in our data, in our SIP plan, that we had very low student participation within the Panorama Success Survey last school year. So our SIP goal for Panorama this coming school year is to increase our participation. So we really want to focus on the student and staff buy-in piece this school year and really be able to utilize the information that the students give us to see, to really understand the perceptions that and what they go through and how we can grow from that as a staff. You'll see in the SIP plan itself, we will plan to add the Panorama survey benchmark window in our assessment calendar, as well as we have gradual goals for each fall, winter, and spring benchmark that we would like to reach, and we'll work on our staff on that. We are really looking forward to utilizing the Panorama data further to develop systems of support for our students who are struggling in areas like attendance.
Right. And so with that being said, one of our intended targets for attendance at UHS, I think, John, it's on the next slide, is to increase the number of students who attend class regularly and daily. Are designated as what's called a critical category, which is basically students who attend class at least 80% of the time or more. So we're really focusing on making sure that the vast number of students at UHS are attending class at least 80% or more of their day. With that being said, we need to revisit an attendance plan. We want to make sure that we're coding students appropriately based on different assets of the building and day. We want to invest time and space within the school day to really make sure that our students feel welcomed and affirmed and challenged in their space. And have been brought with a great opportunity to learn, so that students want to be at Urbana High School. Like we said, we're really proud to both be Tigers. We know what it's like to attend Urbana High School as students, and so we want to bring that really back for our students. And so with that, like Ms. Rinkenberger shared, we want to use Panorama to kind of set some goals. Just like all of our other goals, we really built incremental goals. And so as we go throughout the year, we really want to make sure that we're monitoring and, with our compliance to make sure that we're actually going to be on projection to meet those goals come spring. With that also being said, one of the big things I talked about earlier, and if I thought about it differently, we would have probably had this up there. One of the big highlights for us this year is we actually built the SIP plan, I think, in one day. It was me, Christine, and Jesse that got together with Kim and built it. And I will tell you that one of the things we really worked on historically is redefining assessment practices. That's not even just for our students, but it's going to be an adjustment for our teachers and also an adjustment for our families. We want our students to know how they're progressing and what their academic levels look like and how to keep moving. But we also want to make sure that we have assessment practices that are consistent across all spaces. Whether it's Panorama, MAP, PSAE, whatever measure we're looking at, we want that data to be something that's consistently used to help us continue on our journey. The big piece is also going to be building professional development. As we talked about earlier, redefining we're actually going to have 4 PLCs that are going to be directly linked to our school improvement plan to help us kind of monitor and work towards success in those areas. And really the overall goal is to just empower our families, our students, our teachers to, be on this academic journey with us and find success, because that's what this is all about, right? And so that's kind of the goal. And when you see the plan, you'll kind of see that the same things kind of put in, which is data, assessment, PD, and just support. And so that's kind of our goal as a new team coming in is to really spend time acclimating ourselves to that and supporting our teachers within it. So.
And one thing to note, as Ms. Kearns shared, we did build our SIP plan. It was pretty admin heavy in terms of voices. We do think that we set up really strong foundational pieces, and then we have areas and plans to include student voice, teacher voice, and wrapping in our teacher leaders and new SIP team members come fall. Just with the transition and stuff, we just weren't able to get the whole crew together. But we think we're in a good place foundation-wise to allow for that to happen. I think that's it. Any questions?
All right, board members, questions. Go ahead, Sherry.
I have no understanding of the new, the assessment that you were talking about, or the grading, the SRL. Could you give me an explanation of that? That was the first thing that you mentioned.
So SRL is our district is our version of standards-based grading. We call it standards reference learning. It's been we're about on a 2-year process right now. We're heading into year 3 with that, and it's to really hone in on students what they know and what they're able to do and show those skills in the class. It's really taking kind of the behavior piece of it out. And really focusing on collecting evidence for standards. Like Dr. Dubiel said, really aligning those standards from course to course, grade level to grade level. That's been part of our work in mapping out our standards. Then we've created proficiency scales, which are similar to rubrics, for the teachers to assess our students on those skills. That's a very, very quick overview.
So I have a question. I guess this isn't just for the building administrative team, but in general. I mean, I applaud all of the plans to use PD to help achieve your goals, but we have lots of things we need to do PD for, right? And so much time that we can really have mandatory PD. So how do we manage, I guess, the competing priorities with regards to that?
Okay. So, for example, with math, I think I touched on that a little bit last time, is we see the need to be really creative. So the illustrative math training for our teachers started prior to the end of the school year. And we just offer multiple modalities, whether it's after school. We even had some Saturday trainings, and then we also have to consider new staff that weren't hired yet that are also going to need to catch up as well. So we're offering that throughout the summer. You know, we've just done multiple sessions of that. And then really also with our instructional coaches, they will be instrumental in that as much as possible also. So you're right, we do have to balance all these things. That's what gets really, I say PD is often the biggest challenge, because there's so many things that we are trying to do to have consistency and align from one level to the next. I mentioned last time a little bit too, we've changed the structure of our school improvement teams and meeting and using program council more effectively, but also having support from central office in those spaces, just because we have a lot of new administrators for next year as well. And so we want to be there to guide and support them as they're implementing their plans and monitoring. So that'll help as well. And then as we're devising our equity action plan too, those are things that we need to consider also. You know, as Dr. Dubiel mentioned, the mandatory PD and focusing on the needs of our students, that's going to be critical.
Any other questions for the high school admin team? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also have to mention one more thing. Mr. Guzman would have been here. He's out of the country. I don't know if everyone knew that, with family at a prearranged trip. So just want to say that too.
All right. Okay, our last administrative report tonight is 10.5, discussion of Board of Education goals. So We've typically done this in an initial discussion at their last meeting in June. The board kind of has an opportunity to throw out goals it would like to achieve in the upcoming school year. This is the beginning of a discussion. We'll have it again when we reconvene in August. Just give us a chance to talk about what we'd like the board to achieve next year. So, there's a few things I've got I'd like to, but if no one else, and this includes study topics as well. If there's something that you'd like to bring as a study topic, for our own professional development, this would be an opportunity to mention that to admin. So, I guess one of the things I'd like to, there's a few things. One is that we are, according to our superintendent contract, supposed to be providing the superintendent with their performance review by March 1st, and we have historically, I think, never done it in that timely fashion. So we have brought it up closer to March, but I'd like to actually do it by our contractual agreed upon time next year. So I'd like to try to plan for superintendent's evaluation sometime prior to March 1. That's one thing. I'd like us to start a discussion with regards to planning for an eventual elementary attendance area redistricting. I think we need to kind of develop a plan for how to do that before we actually go to do that, and I think it's going to take us time to discuss the planning process for that. It may involve hiring an external firm to help us evaluate how to equitably draw these boundaries to reduce some of the systemic inequities that are inherent in our neighborhoods. So that's something I think that we should take on as a board. I think something Robbie and I have discussed over email is looking at our board policy manual with regards to English language learners in our dual language program, maybe enhancing and revisiting that and participate in conjunction with our admin team and with the BPAC group as well. I don't know if anybody else has any. This is just an initial discussion, but we'll try to finalize this, I guess, come August. I guess something else I'd like to do at the end of the year, like a year from now, is also have a kind of report to grade ourselves and how we did against our own goals.
A quick question.
Sure.
What were some of the goals for this year that you, as far as evaluating, what were the ones that you had?
To start the equity audit. I mean, the other things, that was a big one. Yeah, I have to dig up the list.
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick. A lot of specific learning more about MAP, because MAP was new. It's our new assessment. So we've had a couple of presentations about that tool that is fairly new to the district. That was something that was brought up as well.
And we have a team. I think I said this before too, but just to reiterate, we have a team that'll be going to Atlanta next week to learn more and network with other educators as well for NWEA MAP. So we're really excited about that. Christina Rinkenberger, Mr. Cooper are going as well. So we have representatives from every level.
I think then it would be important to have a follow-up from what you've learned and what we've learned last year, because that's really important as far as when the evaluations come out and the district report cards, to see if we're still on the right direction for our students using that.
Definitely.
And another thing that I thought about based on one of our last meetings when we tried to incorporate Spanish interpretation, and how that really didn't work out well in this setting, and I was wondering if there's other ways that we can explore in order to have it not only in Spanish but in French or whatever is needed.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We have a system, a headphone system, that we have not ventured into experimenting with, so we've talked about that a little bit.
Maybe
and also, as of like the last couple board meetings, the live stream now has captions And it doesn't do the live stream captions in multiple languages, but as soon as it finishes, it translates into a couple thousand languages that you can select from.
So that we need to be able to be aware of those things and be able to communicate that with parents then.
So a couple of the things that we did accomplish was our new UEA contract. That was one of our goals from last year. It was a huge one. Finalizing the extension of the Aquatic Center agreement. So we were able to do that. Recruitment and retention of board members. Making sure that we were diversifying the board. Equity audit, strategic planning was one. So we've started the equity audit process, DL decision, and the program evaluation. We also had on here midterm goal to check for superintendent evaluation to get that done. And I don't know that we got closer. And there were several curriculum areas that board members wanted to know more about. So MAP, Panorama, more about the math adoption, education pathways, SRL, which is something you brought up. So we had a report on that earlier in the year. And the ELA committee, which was something that is fairly new that the board will be hearing more about for next year. So those were some of the things from last year. Yep.
Yeah, so to the board or to the public, if you have, I guess, recommendations for board goals, to please get them to this sometime, I guess, over the next 6 or so weeks before we reconvene. Go ahead, Robbie.
One thing maybe towards the end of this year is maybe a reassessment on the facilities in that, with this Wiley project in process to being finished, that would be all the elementary schools. And I've heard that the logic after that was to move on to the middle school and high school for these, there's some term for the landscape or something.
The campus land use.
Campus land use.
There was a series of recommendations.
But like at the very first presentation with that solar panel thing, one thing that struck my eye was that King Elementary has, I guess, like an F- or something as far as its energy use. So, I mean, that was one of, I guess, the second elementary school renovated. So, maybe there's, improving that is not necessarily improving Wiley and Thomas Paine, so that way the average is better. But, maybe there's some issue at King that needs to be fixed, or maybe we need to look at stuff like that.
Yeah, we've specifically talked about that F at King and what that might be attributed to. So it's something we're looking at. Yes.
But I think in general, you're right. It's been 6 or 7 years since we had a look at ranking our facilities needs of the district, and at that time it wasn't a major overview. We kind of did just a reassessment of things we knew about. It's been probably 15 years since we did have a very comprehensive assessment. So I think you're right. It's time for that again. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Just think it out, and we'll talk about this with our other two board members come August. We do have a whole list of action items tonight, starting off with our consent agenda. 11.1 are our minutes for a May 9th District Facilities Committee meeting, amended and approved by that committee on May 31st. The May 16th business meeting, the May 31st District Facilities Committee, approved by that committee on June 14th. June 5th special meeting, and the June 6th study session. 11.2 are our bills and checks. Ed fund bills to the tune of $2.256 million. O&M fund bills for $262,000. Bond and interest fund bills for $135,000. Transportation fund bills for $280,000. Working cash bonds for $57,000. School facility occupancy tax for $524,000. Tort for $58,000. Life safety levy for $10,000. Payroll, salary, and benefits for $4.98 million. Urbana adult education for $186,000. There's a list of personnel items in our packet as well. There's 11.4 interfund loans from O&M to working cash for the amount of $1 million, from IMRF to working cash for $500,000, and transportation fund to working cash for $200,000. A permanent transfer was requested on June 30th. It's a permanent transfer of funds. Amount of transfers will be in the actual amounts of interest earned through June 30th, 2023. Interest earned in working cash and bond interest funds will be permanently transferred to the Ed Fund, which the Board of Education deems to be the fund most in need of such interest. 11.5 are approval of the June bills for payment in advance. Copies of these bills will be included with the August board agenda materials. A resolution declaring the intent to retain interest earnings as interest and not to claim it as principal. This is a resolution declaring intent to retain interest earning as interest and not to claim it as principal. 11.7 is resolution authorizing and directing the sale or disposal of personal property. In accordance with state law, these are weeding logs from King, UMS, and Wiley, 200 student chairs, 150 student desks, wooden bookshelves, broken metal cart, mini fridge, miscellaneous list of and a variety of items from adult ed as well. We've already approved 11.8 earlier, and the last item on our consent agenda is the approval of a new activity UHS account for Humanities Studio. Does anybody wish to remove any of these items from the consent agenda?
I'd like to discuss 11.7 and 11.8.
Okay, so the 11.8.
11.8, the motion was to approve the assistant principal, but has nothing to do with any of the other personnel items, so we need to approve all those other personnel items.
Oh, correct.
Yeah.
But we already approved 11.8 earlier.
I know. If you recall, Sherry Langendorf said, I move to approve whatever that lady's name was to be the assistant principal at Thomas Paine. She didn't say anything about the 30 other people that are on that list.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, then we're okay.
Okay.
I just want to talk about 11.7 then.
All right. Okay. So let's remove 11.7 from the consent agenda and talk about that separately, and continue on. The chair would entertain a motion for approving the consent agenda minus items 11.7 and as published 11.8. Is there a motion for the floor?
So moved. I'd like to move to.
Second.
I thought you were going to do it. Go ahead.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve the consent agenda except for items 11.7, 11.8. It's been moved and it's by Member Lagendorf and seconded by Member Baxley. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, a roll call, please.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
And President Pulowski?
Yes, so let's move to 11.7. We can open the floor for discussion before any motion is fine.
I just wanted to discuss this because there's a email I received about this, and it's kind of unclear, both in the way it's written on this agenda as well as it was in the attachment. Where do those 200 student chairs and 150 student desks come from? Is that from adult ed building? Seems like a lot of chairs for the adult ed building.
I wish we'd gotten that question ahead of time, because Katie has the weeding log. I do not. Randy, do you know, are they broken chairs and desks?
Most of them are
or-
broken chairs. I
Yeah.
don't know where exactly they came from. I don't have a weeding log in front of me.
They're
either,
not
but
from Wiley specifically, they're from the
No.
whole district.
Yeah, it's
That was what the
throughout the
question
district.
came from.
Are they Wiley?
Yeah, because it was like, are
Because it
those
does
200
kinda-
chairs from Wiley?
They're not
It
from
looks
Because,
like
you know,
that with the comma, you're right,
yeah.
but typically we don't dispose of a desk or chair unless it's broken.
Yeah,
We
they're not
can't
from Wiley. They're probably from Leal Basement. They've been down there for multiple years. We had some that we put in the storage that are older than probably all of us, and they were just rusted and broken. I don't know why they were kept this long, but we discarded. Yes.
Okay, oh, Thanks for the clarification. Is there a motion for the floor? For 11.7.
Oh, I will move to approve 11.7.
Right. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or comments? Roll call, please.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
And President Pulowski.
Yes, we have a long list of individual action items as well. We have 12.1 are gifts. David Gerstenecker donated his food balance of $9.40 to the Evelyn Burnett Underwood Instrumental Assistance Program. That's awesome. Ann Abbott donated $2,000 to purchase items for unaccompanied minors in the district. Teresa Herman donated $100 to the Urbana High School Royal Diamonds Activity Club. Altruisa International of Champaign-Urbana donated $300 for the Urbana Adult Education graduates' cap and gowns. Jonna Barger, Adara Salon House donated $100 to the Urbana High School Winter Guard. Wendy Mathelson donated graphic novels and books for the Leo Library and classrooms. The donation was valued between $100 and $125. Urbana First Methodist Church of Urbana donated $200 worth of gloves, mittens, gloves and scarves to Wiley Elementary in January of 2023. Trinity Lutheran Church donated $600 worth of coats, pants, socks, underwear, hats, and gloves to Wiley Elementary in December of 2022. Per request of Fraz Bashir, Community Foundation of East Central Illinois donated $200 to Lille Elementary to use at their discretion. Western Governors University donated 32 regular flagpoles and 16 smaller swing flagpoles valued at $779.50 to Urbana High School Color Guard. The following donated a total of $800 to Urbana High School: Angelina DeVito, Stella Max Volt, Jim and Dottie DeVito, and Cinema Gallery. The following donated a total of $550 to Urbana High School Choir: Copenhagen Kumston, C.K. Gonzalez, and Robin Sonner. Is there a motion to receive the gifts and to send out thank yous?
I move to receive the gifts and send out thank yous.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for all these generous gifts. 12.2 is the appointment of the 2023 Illinois Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly Representative. So this would have to be someone who's planning on attending the joint annual conference. Don't know who in the board has indicated that they're. So it'll be one of the three of us.
Tori should do it then.
We need to get on the phone anyway, but.
Not yet.
No.
Would you like to do it, Paul?
I mean, I'll do it. I'd rather not because I actually enjoy going to the sessions that take place during that time. But it is an important role. The assembly then votes as a body to support or particular causes that are typically involve advocating at Springfield for certain policies. In the past, there's been amendments wishing to allow, for example, teachers to have firearms at their desks, and we've helped vote that down. You believe it or not, yeah. Many of the school districts are rural, so their needs are different than ours, and it's one vote per district, no matter the size. So that has an effect on how the body votes. So is there? I guess I'm willing to do it, but is there a motion on the floor to that effect?
I move for Paul to represent us.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. 12.3 is approval of the guaranteed energy performance contract with Venergy. So this was the presentation on April 18th, coupled with the presentation tonight. Again, this would be to use cash we have on hand to put solar panels on Thomas Paine and to do the same thing at Wiley while also repairing the roof at the same time. And then the rebates we get back from the different governmental agencies and from Ameren would then come back to our ed fund. So that's the motion. That's the proposed motion from recommended by administration. Is there a motion for the floor so we can begin discussion?
Yeah, I move for it to be accepted.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Now will be the time for the board to discuss this motion. All right. I don't. No one wishes to speak to the
Well,
motion.
I do.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't have much background on this, so I tried to study as much as I could today. And after hearing the presentation today, I just think now is the time to do it if we're going to do it. And I think we need to make some advancements in our district with our energy, and I think we have to do it now before we can't get those rebates.
Anyone else? All right,
As pro solar and wind and geothermal and all that, I too agree that we need to do something like this, but I want to make sure that it's done in the right way, where my children aren't going to be paying for this down the road. Correct me if I'm wrong. I heard something in the last presentation when I was on YouTube in April that it would be a 30-year. We'd be waiting 30 years until we saw any kind of payback on this, or the 12.5 years. Is that what we're looking at?
It's 12.5.
12.5. Okay. All right.
The incentives we get like immediately within the first year, but the energy savings.
The energy savings, we'll see over 12 and a half years later, we'll start seeing a, okay.
It's important to clarify that. Again, we're not borrowing any money to do this as well. Okay. Any further comments or discussion? This takes a roll call vote.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. And Member President Pulaski.
Yes, motion passes. 12.4 is our tentative district budget that was presented at our last meeting. The following are dates for developing and adopting the 23-24 district budget. So tonight is the adoption of the tentative budget that we need to adopt this prior to June 30th so that we can operate on July 1st. So if we don't approve this tonight, we'll have to meet again before July 1st. September 5th is when we'll have a public hearing on the 23-24 budget, and we'll have a study session that night concerning the overall budget. And then on September 19th, we will have an approval of the final budget. There are things in flux between now and then that keep us from having final numbers. So, is there a motion to approve the tentative budget that was presented at our last meeting on the 7th? Oh, sorry, on the 6th, excuse me.
I move to approve the tentative, or to accept the tentative budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. And President Pulaski?
Yes, motion passes. And similarly, we have to do the same thing for the Urbana adult education budget that was presented last meeting as well. Same thing, but for adult ed. So is there a motion for the floor?
I move to approve the tentative budget for adult education.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, great. Any further comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. President Pulowski?
Yes. 12.6 is our board meeting schedule. So this is something we do at the last meeting of the academic year every year. We determine when we're meeting and where we're meeting.
So, in your copy, I don't remember, you guys got a color copy? So the orange is the areas that we wanted to discuss with you tonight to get your feedback. For new board members, we put a little more information in here in the parentheses just to give you context as to why we're talking about this. So as you know, we typically meet on the first and third Tuesday of each month. But there are some exceptions based on our school calendar. We usually make those exceptions now, so then everybody can plan for the year. You guys can put well in advance any changes. There are times when, based on holidays or breaks, where we have had to have, it doesn't sound fun, but we have had back-to-back board meetings. So I'm just going to kind of go through these, and then I think, is that okay, Paul? We just make
Absolutely.
decisions as we go.
Sounds good to me.
So the month of August, I actually put in some dates here, and just to give you a little history, years ago, prior to me being superintendent, the board would typically vote to cancel the first meeting in August, so there would be only one meeting in August, and that was often because our board president was traveling that week and in another country. But since coming on, and as you know, with the teacher shortages and hiring, it has really benefited us to have that first meeting in August, because we don't know what's going to happen between now and then in terms of resignations, and it is always good for us to be able to have that early August meeting to get those hiring, those personnel items approved. Normally, we would be meeting on August 1st, but that felt really early, so I bumped it back to August 8th, just to give us an additional week to get through all the hiring paperwork and interviews and things like that. So that's the first change, is moving from the August 1st to August 8th. And then our first week of school, typically we always have a board meeting that week, or we have in the past, and it's really, really hard for us on days when we have opening day and we're opening school for the first day to then come and sit in a meeting until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So administration would like to ask the board if they would be willing to entertain for the month of August, instead of meeting on the 1st and the 3rd, we would meet on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesdays, if that works with people's schedules.
When's the first day of school?
First day of school is the 14th. So our our meeting would be on August 15th, and the first day for teachers is the 14th, but the first day for students is the 16th. So we will all be out and very visibly present the morning after a board meeting, which is harder. But
So the biggest concern is can we get a quorum on the proposed date of August 8th? And I mean, I can make it. I don't know, as long as we can get at least a 4.
at least 4 people. Okay. Okay.
Does anybody know that they can't make August 8th?
I will not be there.
Okay.
Okay. What about, so,
Tori in the horn, maybe.
okay.
Lola, Ben, you guys okay? Okay, so we have 4.
We have 4. Okay.
We get Tori anyway for
Yeah.
pretty soon.
I'll get her to be part of this, because her calendar, yes. So, hey, Tori, I'm going to put you on speaker. We're talking about the board meeting schedule, so if you've got your calendar. Okay, putting you on speaker. So we just talked about switching August, our first and third Tuesday meeting, to the second and the fourth Tuesdays in August, to allow for opening school that second, third week, and allow us to get more hiring done at the beginning of August. So if you're available August 8th, do you know if you're available?
Yeah, August 8th is fine.
Okay, so then we have at least 6. Okay, next then I'm going to move to October. If you remember when Dr. Norton presented the 23-24 calendar, we have a new fall break. And our second board meeting of the month, that third meeting, would fall during fall break. So I did not want to make the decision for the board, so I've just kept the 17th as our date. Our options would be to have back-to-back meetings on the 3rd and the 10th, or meet on the 3rd and the 24th. What would the board desire?
Well, the issue with doing it on the 24th would be that we typically work on the agenda and supporting documents the Friday prior, and that would be a day off for
Yes.
for people. So I would recommend we move it to October 10th as a result of that. It's the same reason we typically don't do it the following week on spring break as well.
October
Good with the 3rd and 10th.
3rd and 10th. October is a month where we have 5 Tuesdays. So we could move to October 31st, but with that being Halloween, I didn't think people would want to entertain that. But we could talk, okay. So 3rd and 10th. Ravi, does 3rd and 10th work? Specifically the 10th? Okay. Okay. Moving to November. November 21st is the day before Thanksgiving break. So as you know, for several years, we have closed the district that Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is November 22nd. We can keep it on November 21st as long as we know we have 4 board members and people are not traveling the week of Thanksgiving. We could move it to, again, have a back-to-back meeting, 7th and the 14th, or we could do it after Thanksgiving on 7th and 28th.
But again, we run into the issue of forcing people, I guess.
Yeah, but we could plan an agenda ahead of time, but yes. 7th and 14th works for us, if that works for board members.
That's fine, Marie.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, 14th. And same thing for December. The December 19th date falls right at the beginning of winter break. We can meet that day. We're working. I mean, central office is open for the remainder of the day. We just want to make sure that we have a quorum.
I mean, I'll be here the 19th, but
Okay.
When does school resume?
Around as well.
So school resumes, that's January. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about January next.
Yeah.
So school resumes on January 3rd or 4th, January 4th. And we have no school on January 2nd, so we'll have to also adjust the January 2nd meeting. Yep. So we can keep the 19th as long as if no one's traveling, we're all here. That works for us. We're here. We can do an agenda the week before. Okay, keep the 19th. Got it. And then January 2nd falls during the winter break. School resumes on the 4th.
Yeah, I think that's cutting it too close.
Yes.
Is there a way we could do it the 9th and then the 23rd?
Ooh, we could do that. 9th, instead of the 9th and the 16th, we could just
Yeah, that
switch
makes
January to do 9th and 23rd.
that makes a lot
Yeah,
of
so
sense
second,
actually,
yeah.
because
I like
I think
that.
there's 5 Tuesdays in
There's
January,
5
too.
Tuesdays in January too.
That's fine for me.
Does that work for you, Ben? Okay. So we will switch, completely switch January to be January 9th and January 23rd. Okay. And then the next topic that we typically discuss is start time. We have been meeting at 6:30 p.m. and if that is still works for everyone.
One thing I thought about after our discussion last time about it is that we talked about the children, and that's important, when we want them to come. But also our staff is here.
It's very late.
And administration, and they have to be at work and early the next morning, and I just think we should be more considerate of them as well.
So you're saying you would like to keep 6:30? Okay.
Yes, for
Tori said
participants,
yes.
not just for us, but for the
For everyone.
participants.
Okay. Is everyone else in agreement with just keeping 6:30 as our start time?
I am.
Okay. All right, I think those were I'm gonna read the list just to make sure I took notes, Lori took notes. Okay, so August, we're gonna be meeting August 8th and August 22nd. In October, we will be meeting October 3rd and October 10th. In November, we will meet November 7th and November 14th. December, we will meet December 5th and December 19th. And in the month of January, we will meet December 9th and January 9th and January 23rd. Okay, we will put this together in the format that we always use and share it back out with everyone, so you can all put those on your calendar for next year.
All right, so is it,
And location, yes, we will be moving to the East Fair Lawn Tiger Academy site. So as soon as this meeting is over, John and his team are going to start transitioning our technology over to the Comcast location, former Comcast Tiger Academy space.
And also, if you're watching online, I assume you noticed, but we've transitioned to our own district YouTube channel. There was a lot of conflicts now that the city is also broadcasting all of their stuff on YouTube. So they suggested that we start our own channel, so our meetings will be there from now on into the future.
it's a big improvement.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so is there a motion for the floor to approve this calendar as read?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
I don't know if we need a roll call or a voice vote. So let's just do a roll call to be safe.
Just to be safe, yeah.
Member Baxley?
Yes?
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf? Yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulowski?
Yes, we have a schedule. 12.7 is approval of a sale of contract and entry agreement for 205 and 211 North Race Street. That is this building. So we are requesting a resolution authorizing and directing sale of this property to the city of Urbana, adopting a contract for sale of real estate and right of entry agreement with the city of Urbana. I guess it behoove us to kind of disclose.
Well, after you make a motion, I can give a little more information for the new board members.
All right, so is there a motion to, to sell this building? And then we can discuss the terms.
Is it so moved? Make a motion?
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, Ben.
So we can discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, so
So just to give new board members a little history, about a year ago, we listed this property from a previous assessment at $1.15 million. We had absolutely no interest and no takers. I think a few people walked through, but nobody offered to purchase the building from us. Then we went through the process of an auction. We lowered the price to $950,000. That auction was unsuccessful and we received no bids. So more just recently, in the last 2 months, we came back to the board to lower the price of this building again to $450,000. There's some very specific rules about as a school district, when we sell property, we have to list it for so many days. We have to post it in the newspaper. We have to have some very specific bid requirements. So we did that twice. The second time, we lowered the price to $450,000, and we received one bid for $113,000, which didn't really meet any of our criteria. So we really couldn't even accept the bid. The city of Urbana at that time approached us. They knew about the $113,000 bid that we received, and then they offered to go through the intergovernmental agreement, kind of the sale of property between two governmental agencies, and they offered to pay us $113,000 for the building, which is the bid that we actually received, which we couldn't actually accept. So that is how we ended up where we are in terms of entering into this agreement with the city to sell them this property. The city is very interested in the property. It is part of the Central TIF, which is a, part of this zone development. If you've been following along, they have done a lot of work in the downtown area, and a lot of studying about how to improve downtown. I know there's interest in maybe having a development like what is across the street, the Stratford Apartments. I think the city is hoping by acquiring this property that they will be able to attract a developer to develop this space to provide some more housing close to the Boneyard, which is another downtown attraction. So I don't know that we're going to have any other interest or any other offers, and which is why we're bringing this before the board today.
No, frankly, it would probably cost us more to tear this building down.
Yes, and
And,
it's full of asbestos, so we'd have to abate it and then tear it down and spend a lot of money.
What was the value? What was it valued at, the building?
So, was it $310,000 of the last? So our last assessment was 1.2 that we did in
It was pre-COVID.
2018. It
Yeah.
was pre-COVID. And then Carol Mitten, the city manager, did an assessment. I want to say, Randy, it was what, 310, 315? It was somewhere around there.
I think you're right.
Yeah, pretty close to that is what, and that's not this building, it's more so the land is worth. Yeah,
Right.
because anybody who
It-
acquires this space is going to tear
It
this
would,
building
it would,
down.
it would
They
cost.
don't want the asbestos?
Yeah, it would cost us more than that to abate
Yeah,
the
yeah,
asbestos
yeah,
than to tear it down.
And the other benefit to a developer is because it's part of the Central TIF district, the city has funding to pay for the demolition and the abatement. So the developer wouldn't have to do that. The city would work with them to make sure that that got taken care of, so.
And hopefully the school district will benefit from it if it is an apartment building or some
Not
type
for
of retail.
15 years.
Well,
because the
planning
central,
ahead.
Yes, the Central TIF doesn't expire until 2040, I believe. But eventually, the
correct.
district will benefit from the sales tax revenue on this space.
I mean, if it's developed into housing, which is probably the most likely cause, we will have potentially more students in our district as
Sure.
well. And
Yes. And I think as residents of Urbana, I believe we'd all be happy to see downtown developed and the downtown project improvement. So this would be an integral part of that, I think, this
Okay.
space.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor to accept the city's bid, and it's been seconded. Is there any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote is in order.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulowski.
Yes, I just guys want to make sure that the Garth signage and the Burkholder signage is retained before.
Oh, yes,
before we
definitely. Yeah, we talked about that. The,
The Garth signage and the Burkholder signage is retained
Yeah.
before we leave.
Randy and I have talked about that, the Burkholder sign is very heavy and we're going to figure out how we can get it off the building.
It's mounted through the building,
Yeah,
so we
so
have to rip holes in the wall to get
we'll
it
have to
out.
rip holes in the wall to take it off, but we will do what we can to make sure.
Has there been any talk about having some continuity between this building and wherever we can celebrate Gene Burkholder's name?
I'm assuming wherever we go, we can look at our facility policy, but I thought the name followed central office, so unless the board wanted to entertain wherever we end up renaming central office to something else, I would think the Burkholder name would follow
I think
us
that's
wherever we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice.
We can
yeah.
make sure that happens.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to 12.8 is our consolidated district plan 2023-2024 approval. Dr. Norton, any last minute comments, I guess, on this? This is presented in prior meetings.
No, this has been a couple meetings ago, and so just requesting approval this evening.
All right. Is there a motion for the floor to approve the consolidated district plan that was presented, I guess, in the last meeting in May?
Motion to approve the plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Robbie.
So 3 pages from the end of this consolidated district plan, in the Title III section where it talks about the BPAC approval of the plan, it still has, Mitzi Maldonado as the BPAC committee chairperson as of August 29, 2003.
We can amend that, so we are able to amend that after it's approved. It has to go through that process, and then we can make those changes. Oops.
We submitted it, Ravi, to ISBE because it's got to get reviewed by 4 different divisions, and they're going to send it back to us anyway, so we can make that correction.
Okay, I mean, you have to correct who's the committee chairperson as well as the committee members.
Yes, that will be corrected.
All right.
Okay.
And did the actual BPAC approve this?
Yes, they, go ahead.
The role of the BPAC is to review it.
They review.
Or did they review it then?
They have
Yes.
reviewed it, yes.
Yeah.
That's the reason why we delayed
Yes.
this approval, was
I
to
know.
give them an opportunity to review.
Thank you, Robbie, for that. Any further comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes?
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulowski?
Yes, 12.9 is approval.
President Pulaski, Board Member Hasanaka emailed me on the board meeting schedule. March 21st, it actually should say March 19th. The second meeting in March, the business meeting. It was listed
Okay.
as March 21st. It is a Thursday, not a Tuesday.
Okay.
It should say March 19th. So, I just
So
wanna make
let's redo that
you.
motion, please. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to our meeting schedule to change March 21st, 2024 to March 19th, 2024?
I moved to change the date from March 21st to March 19th.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any further discussion?
I noticed that after we approved it already, just so you know.
I appreciate it, Robbie.
So it wasn't before.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's do another roll call, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes?
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulowski?
Yes, now it's time for 12.9, approval of a bid for the Urbana High School chiller installation. Any details for us, Randy, before we start talking?
Sure. Staff identified a rattling noise in the Urbana High School chiller on the east side of the building that services the attendance office, gymnasiums, music, and driver's ed spaces. This unit was installed as part of the 1987 UHS addition and renovation project. On April 11th, the service technician inspected the chiller and determined that several welds had broken, causing the baffles within the unit to shake. It was determined that an emergency replacement was necessary, as the baffles are at risk of detaching and compromising the entire system. Board approved emergency purchase of a new chiller in May. A temporary rental chiller is in place until the new chiller is able to be installed. On June 15th, 2023 at 2 p.m. the bid opening was held for the installation of the UHS chiller equipment. We recommend the board accept the low bid from Reliable Plumbing and Heating for the installation of the Urbana High School chiller equipment for a total cost of $194,100.
Great. Is there a motion for the floor?
I move for approval.
Thank you, Tori. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions, discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes?
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulowski?
Yes, 12.10 is a renewal of our MTD contract for services for busing students to and from Urbana Middle School and Urbana High School for the 2023-24 school year. The cost for the upcoming school year would be $200,489.
So, Member Langendorf had a couple questions about this contract, and I thought, after talking to her, that our new board members might have questions as well. So, on your memo that you have, we started contracting with MTDs in 1987 to transport our middle school and high school students. As you know, we provide transportation for any students who live outside of a mile and a half to and from school. The reason for the change here is we used to calculate our agreement based on student enrollment. But more recently, if you looked at the contract, we have 6 or 7 routes. But a couple of those have been very crowded and full. And so we'd approached MTD during the year and asked them if we could have a second bus. So specifically, the Ivanhoe bus and the Prairie School area buses are really, really full. And as you heard our SROs say today from UMS, some of the issues that we had this year happened on the bus. So there were honestly just several altercations and physical aggression incidents on the MTD buses. And when they're really full like that, it's really hard for the driver. It's just a difficult situation. So when we went to them and said, can we add another bus? Of course, they didn't have another driver, and asking for that mid-year makes it a little more difficult in terms of calculating what those costs would be. So that's one of the reasons we shifted to more of a cost based on the number of routes that we have. So then if we need more flexibility during the school year to request changes in routing, we have the ability to do that. So we also have not changed our pricing with them in several years. We've used the same price point for many, many years. So since we were kind of negotiating a new agreement, they thought it was also time to bring us up to 22, 23 numbers in terms of costs. So that's why there's also an increase.
I guess, is there a motion for the floor?
Yeah.
I'm really glad to see that that issue was addressed because I'm well aware of it. I've lived in my area for over 20 plus years, and that seems to have been a problem that got worse. And it was a concern certainly when COVID hit, and I used to see the kids just standing up and just starting together on
Yes.
the buses. And I call constantly to MTV to see what they,
Could do.
be able to do, and I'm just glad to see that.
Yeah, thank
that's
you.
fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jones. One other thing that we talked to them about is when we have areas where we see growth. So I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some new housing in the Savannah Green area, and we don't have a bus stop right there right now. So this also would allow us, if once those 40 homes are constructed, if we find that there are a large number of middle school or high school students there, then they'd be able to add a route mid-year also for that. So it just gives us a little more flexibility. Yeah.
Right. Again, there is no motion on the floor, so is there a motion to approve the MTD contract for the tune of $200,489?
I move to approve the contract with MTD.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments, questions, discussion?
Could this be one of our study sessions about safety on the bus?
Sure.
Sure.
Right. Roll call, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulowski?
Yes, and lastly, 12.11, an approval of an emergency contract for Urbana Middle School boiler repair. This requires 6 board members to vote. Randy, any context for us?
Yeah. During our yearly routine boiler inspection, our boiler inspector and a maintenance guy noticed that that both boilers at the middle school were severely corroded in and around all the tubes. We reached out to Jarvis Welding to perform emergency service. Jarvis is the only boiler tube repair company that is qualified to do the service. The boiler tubes last an average of 10 to 20 years depending on water quality and chemical treatment and the quality of the metal pipe used. Work, if approved, this work would start June 22nd and be completed before 30th of June. It's our recommendation that we do a complete retube of both boilers to ensure future safety and reliability. We recommend Jarvis Welding to provide labor, equipment, and material to remove all the tubes, clean the inside of the boiler shell while the tubes are out, clean the tube seats, install and weld new tubes, discard the old tubes, and do a hydro test of both boilers at a cost of $65,200. All welding by Jarvis will be in accordance with the state and ASME requirements and will pass state fire marshal requirements when finished.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion for the floor?
I move for approval.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Member Exum, seconded by Member Baxley. Any further comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Baxley?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Langendorf, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulowski.
Yes, there is no call for future special or executive
Story
meetings. So our next meeting will be on August 8th. Superintendent's report.
Okay. Thank you, John. So we just, with it being summer, we didn't have a lot to share, but we did want to share a few pictures of some of the happenings through a couple of our programs. So right now, our elementary summer program happening at King is called See You Around Town. They've been over at the I Explore. So these are a few pictures of some of their visits to campus. And their visits around the university. So this is a new program. I think it's just the second year that the university's been doing this, and it's just a way for our youth to have an experience on campus. You'd be surprised how many of our kids live right with the university in their backyard and never actually venture onto campus. So. We're really excited to be able to have these students get to see the university in a very different way. Next, our Freedom School program is, we have about 40 students that are still involved over at Tiger Academy through the summer, especially through the month of June. So twice a week they are going through internships. Some are at the Park District. We have 2 students here. There are a couple students working with Randy in facilities. So some of our Freedom School partners have opened up their spaces to provide internship opportunities for our young people, which is fabulous. The other 2 days a week, they are going out and also exploring in different ways. So 2 of those photos are them at the Eastern Illinois University. And then last week they went to Harris Stowe State University in St. Louis. Tomorrow they're going to Chicago. So we're really getting them out and also just exposing them to some things they've not been exposed to. We've been surprised just right here in Urbana, some of the activities that we've done with the Freedom School students that they've not even been exposed to right here in their own community. So it's also another great program. We will definitely be inviting them back either in August or early September to share with the board and just do a little board report. They're looking forward to that. Summer meals, we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to say a lot about it just due to the lateness of the hour. We are feeding families at across the district where we have programs for breakfast and lunch. We also want to encourage any public or families or staff who have returning students to please register your students. This weekend is Jetty Roads Day at King Park. And again, registration for new students is July 26th and 27th. And last but not least, Todd has not wanted a lot of fanfare, but we could not let his last board meeting go without mentioning it. So thank you, Todd. Tonight is Todd's last board meeting, not that he has been counting at all. Todd has worked for the district for 18 years and 20. 18 continuous. Thank you. 20 years. Thank you, Todd. And 12, his last 12 have been as Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. So thank you for your dedication to our district, our students, our families. We know you and your wife, Jan, have already all kinds of trips planned. So we know we'll have you here for a few more weeks because Todd's going to be working to help Miss Ladd transition a little over the summer. But this is his last board meeting, so we wanted to say thank you and enjoy your retirement. Yay.
No, thank you, Todd. You will be missed.
Yes. Now, FOIAs. Before I read the FOIAs, I did get a question from a board member about just the amount of FOIAs that we've been receiving. And procedures, yes. So I'll let Paul, if you want to address the procedures, but I did tell Board Member Langendorf that I would bring some numbers just to share with the board and public around the costs. Just when you look at this list, the sheer number of FOIAs that we've received. So since January, we have accumulated in costs through April $26,375 just in our lawyer fees for our attorney from Robinson Schwartz, Susan, who handles FOIAs and PACs. We have 11 outstanding FOIAs right now, 8 from May and 3 from June. So we're anticipating just the cost of the amount of lawyer time going to FOIAs is probably going to hit, if not $35,000, we think it probably will be closer to 40, because that does through April, so for the whole year. To give you some comparison, Sherry, you asked about that. Last year it was $6,000. The year before that, $18,000. The year before that, $13,000. So I just wanted to give Board Member Langendorf asked for that information, so I wanted to share that publicly.
Our FOIA officer is Lori Johnson, who receives them and processes them and makes sure that we do everything according to the law.
And do we know how much of her time is being?
Well, I was going to add, it isn't just Lori's time. John has to do all the searches, emails, every single document kind of comes through John as well. So I don't know that we've tracked the number of hours Lori spends on FOIAs in a week, or John, but it has increased significantly in the last few months. All right, on to FOIAs. So all have been completed. The first, Tom Schroeder, any records or combination of records that track the number of elementary school intra-district transfers by attendance map, assigned schools, and attended schools. E.g., for example, how many elementary students living within the Yankee Ridge attendance area are attending each of Leal, TP, DPW, Wiley, and MLK. I would prefer records that include reasons for transfers, i.e. parent requests, programmatic transfers by program, administrative reassignment, etc. I am seeking the maximum number of years of records that can be located without incurring any fees for searching or creating significant delays. Tom Schroeder, records documenting the appointment of committee members to the 2023 Facilities Planning Committee by the President of the Board of Education. Smart Procure, purchase order number. If purchase orders are not used, a comparable substitute is acceptable. Invoice, encumbrance, or check number. Purchase date, line item details, line item quantity, line item price, vendor ID number, name, address, contact person, and their email address. Tom Schroeder. For each goal on the superintendent's contract, I am seeking a record that provides evidence that the goal was completed. Tom Schroeder. Applications and any supporting documents submitted by or on behalf of current known applicants. Tom Schroeder. A list of documents or categories of records that can be immediately disclosed by the district. local labs, any contracts or agreements entered into between your school district and vendors providing diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI services from January 1st, 2019 to the present day. Invoices, payment records, or financial documentation related to payments made to DEI vendors during the specified period. Any reports, assessments, or evaluations conducted by DEI vendors, including their findings and recommendations. Communications, including emails, letters, and memos exchanged between your school district and DEI vendors discussing the provision of services or any related matters. This FOIA was sent to every school district in the state, so every district. So we haven't done anything wrong in our DEI department. I don't want people thinking that, but that was a statewide FOIA that every district was asked to respond to.
All right, thank you. Board reports. Anybody have a report tonight? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Until April 8th.
August 8th.
August 8th. Woo, nice. August 8th. I just got on backwards. Yes.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll see you next academic year.
Have a good rest of your